Okay, very good afternoon to you all. We shall start. We are still missing one speaker, but okay, hopefully he will join us soon. My name is Manuel Palazuelos Martinez, and I'm leading a team at the Joint Research Center that is called the Smart Specialization Platform. And okay, we are working basically on helping countries and regions to first design and now implement smart specialization strategies at the European Commission. And we have a very interesting panel ahead of us, I think. We have, nonetheless, the very difficult task of keeping you awake after lunch, but I think I have a very good set of allies for that. And I will present them in a minute. We will have, first of all, a presentation from us, from the Joint Research Center, that I will deliver. And then we will have interventions from Viktor Nedovic, who's the head of the S3 Working Group, State Secretary of the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, Technological Development in Serbia. Welcome, Viktor.
Thank you.
Then we have also Darko Petrusic, who is head of the S3 Working Group and Director General of the Ministry of Science in Montenegro. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we have Jasmina Majzorowska, who is head of the S3 Working Group and head of the Industrial Policy and Competitiveness Unit at the Ministry of Economy in North Macedonia. Welcome as well, Jasmina. We did not envisage to have Linda because she had actually, that you see on screen, who is the equivalent post, so the head of the S3 Working Group in Albania, but she had a last-minute issue. And Vedat, I had been informed that he had no issue, so hopefully he will join us soon. Vedat Sangonjeva, who is the head of the S3 Working Group and Director of Strategic Planning Office at the Office of the Prime Minister in Kosovo. Okay, let's move ahead. Let me tell you the way that we are going to proceed. First, we will have my keynote presentation, where I will try to do mainly two things to a little bit set the scene, remembering or reminding all of us about some of the elements that make smart specialization successful and that we have seen in practice with the experience that we have seen in the EU. And also, I will try to present a study that we've done with some facts and figures that might help us understanding the environment for cooperation in smart specialization. And then we will have, hopefully, a lively debate with interventions from all of our speakers. And I've asked them to think a little bit about particular issues of the smart specialization process. In fact, I will read you some of the guiding questions that I have distributed and where most of our discussions will evolve, and I will ask them to react one by one in the order that you see there in the agenda on the points that they find more relevant for their own experience in their countries. So the first topic is, what are the specific difficulties? Because we've talked this morning a lot about the particular successes that we've seen, and I think it's interesting to talk a little bit about the specific difficulties that they have found in the smart specialization process in their country. Also, how was their smart specialization approach adapted to answering the challenges that they found in their countries? I will not be exhaustive, but I will read you some of the main ones. Also, what is the place of smart specialization in the research and innovation policy in terms of how they reinforce the ecosystems? And also, what synergies can be built with other agendas? Something that we've been discussing also this morning, this issue of how we find parallelisms or synergies with other agendas, be it industrial policy, be it territorial cohesion, entrepreneurship, you name it. And finally, how do you plan to integrate this cross-sectoral dimension of smart specialization in the policy processes? So, particularly in the prioritization areas, but our speakers might refer to more issues if they wish. Okay, so these are mostly the topics that we will be debating, but now let me change quickly hats and let me move to my role of presenter, and I will present from our side, as I mentioned, some of the key features that I think we need to have always in mind when designing the strategies, and then some of the study that I've mentioned. First of all, I've entitled this presentation Potential for Knowledge-Based Economic Cooperation because of the second part, the study that I will present. First of all, it's important to always remember that this smart specialization concept and approach always requires to be fairly sound in the analysis, and we say that it's smart because basically it obliges countries and regions, or it pushes countries and regions to identify their own, to make an analysis of their own situation and also the relations between their territories and others. Also, we tend to say that specialized because it is an essential element, I would say. It's something also that has come up this morning in the discussions. The prioritization. I don't think that you can call strategy smart specialization if you have not prioritized. Obviously, prioritized is a process. Sometimes, you don't get to full prioritization at first, and it requires several cycles, but prioritization is indeed one of the main elements, one of the core elements of the approach. And also, I like to put the emphasis on the word strategic, because at the end of the day, we're talking about smart specialization strategies. So the word strategies should also be bear in mind when we're thinking about this, because we need to define a strategy, a shared vision for territorial innovation in our country or in our region. And this is about what? This is about identifying economic potential, identifying also the innovative potential, identifying also the scientific potential, and try to put this at the service of the challenges that we have. The societal challenges that we have, because at the end of the day, we want to get innovation, but innovation not as a means per se, but as an innovation as a means to achieve growth and jobs. And we do that, a key feature of smart specialization, again, is how do we identify all these potentials? Well, we do that through the entrepreneurial discovery process. This concept that also has come up this morning, and that basically we have to do with the main stakeholders. The main stakeholders being, well, obviously business, obviously research and education, so universities have a very important role to play, also public and private research bodies, etc. Public administration, and this is something that I think very important, because when we thought about public administration in previous strategies before smart specialization, in the EU as well, we sometimes thought of a single department. And I think what smart specialization brings is that it pushes countries to be interdepartmental, that public administration coordinates between the different departments. And I think in the EU in general, this is a battle that we have won, that smart specialization has brought that, let's say, the Department of Territorial Development or similar would have to cooperate with the Department of Innovation and with the department in charge of the different thematic areas, be it energy, be it agriculture, etc. So we've ordered, the best way probably to understand what this process entails is by going through the steps that are proposed, and these are the steps that we proposed for the EU. So we proposed an analysis of the regional innovation potential, the regional, well, innovation, economic, all the potentials that I've mentioned, to set up a governance structure that would be able to cater for this stakeholder participation, and would be able to carry the process forward, be it steering team, well, it has taken different shapes in different countries, and then together with that, build this vision for the future of the region, which involves also a selection of priorities, this prioritization, and setting up the right policy mix for this to be a reality. Let's not forget a final step that probably most of the Western Balkan countries may not be thinking so much about, which is monitoring and evaluation, but it will come in the process because, okay, also something that is peculiar to smart specialization is that it tries to put more emphasis on it, so that we don't only evaluate, let's say, at the end of the period, if we have done right or wrong or how have we fared, but also we monitor across the period because, okay, the economy around us is changing very quickly, and also the priorities that we have chosen, we have to be able to detect sometimes new priorities or priorities that were important and they're becoming not important anymore in our economy. So it has to be a living process. Okay, it is interesting to note, and I have a quick couple of slides on this, that the smart specialization, that was a concept that was envisaged for the European Union, is also taking is also taking, let's say, an international dimension. It's something that probably we did not expect ourselves when we started working on this, but we are being contacted by a lot of countries that want to have smart specialization process, such as the one that we have had in the EU. And I think this is interesting also because it's not linked to funds. Sometimes, we tend to say that, okay, in the EU, there are always funds, structural funds to support this process. For the Western Balkan countries, less so. I mean, there's some IPA funding, there's some elements of funding that can help in the process, but okay, there's no allocated, but there might be some support. For other countries, there's no support at all. They do it for the sole idea that it is beneficial for them. And this is, for example, this has been the case of a country that understood this from the very beginning and was one of the early newcomers, such as Norway, very advanced country, and that they understood and they put their own funds into this process. Our emphasis now is very much on the work on Western Balkans that you see there, the countries, the economies that are involved and interested in the process, but we are having also a lot of interest, for example, from Latin America and also from Australia. I was yesterday with the Australian regions that want to implement according to the methodology, to implement smart specialization according to the methodology that we have developed in the JRC. And this has, given examples. For example, you see some of the examples on screen. For example, in Australia, as I was mentioning, in Chile, in Mexico, in Brazil, in Colombia. So different experiences that are taking place as we speak around the world. Okay, focusing on the area, let's say the geographical area of interest today. We started working with the Western Balkan countries a few years ago in the pilot phase, mostly with Serbia. And then I'm very glad to say that we have enlarged our geographical scope, and now we are working together with DG NEAR on all Western Balkan countries, and actually Turkey as well in a more incipient manner, and some other countries. But okay, let's focus on Western Balkan countries here. Also, I was saying that we are working with DG NEAR because DG NEAR also saw the interests of this. And I quote something that Director General of DG NEAR, the Director General of DG NEAR, Christian Danielsson, said in the Sofia conference that we had a year ago. And he said, supporting smart specialization in the Western Balkans is the logical extension of our work. So they are already accompanying these countries in a lot of issues, and mainly on economic reforms, and they thought that smart specialization would complement this very well. Okay, let us adapt, let's say, the reality and the methodology that we had proposed for the EU to the Western Balkans, let's say, situation. And what we have done is we have adapted slightly the steps that I have described to you that happened in the EU to create a process for these countries. And why we have adapted, for example, to emphasize the issue of institutional capacity building, which is at the very start of the process, because it's something that also Slavo mentioned earlier this morning. It's an essential element for smart specialization policy, I would say for any policy, but okay, I'm going to talk about the one that I know best, to work. Also, this would involve moving then to a mapping exercise. And I'm glad to say, first of all, that, okay, the process of institutional capacity building is taking place or has taken place in all Western Balkan economies. The mapping exercise, Serbia and Montenegro have already gone through this exercise, and Albania and North Macedonia are undergoing this mapping exercise. Then it is important to move to this essential part of smart specialization. I always say that the entrepreneurial process of discovery is very much at the heart of what is new in smart specialization and at the heart of what smart specialization is. And this entrepreneurial process of discovery is taking place as we speak in Serbia. Indeed, there will be several events, I think in the second week of July, Victor, if I remember correctly, that will be also underpinning the process of entrepreneurial discovery process. And Montenegro has undergone this process. And then the institutional capacity for implementation, which is essential to be able to ensure that we don't stay in a nice strategy that stays in someone's drawer, but something that can indeed be implemented and that is part of the strategy, and then the final S3 strategy. And we have heard this morning from Minister Sanja Damjanovic and from other speakers that indeed Montenegro is about has already finalized this strategy and is about to adopt it. Okay, let me tell you very, very briefly some of the ways in which we are supporting this process. We are supporting this process, I will just mention two in the interest of time. One of the ways in which we are indeed supporting this process is through events, because we believe that events such as this one can indeed promote certainly cooperation, but also learning experiences. And we've seen also in the EU that this peer learning, so learning from the experience of other countries, from the difficulties. Sometimes we do learn more from the difficulties than from the successes, but learning certainly from both helps a lot to advance the process of other countries. We have organized some of these workshops. This morning we have repeatedly made reference to the one that started more or less the process in Sofia about 1 year ago, and then this event today is part of that dynamic. Another way in which we are supporting this process is with the reports that we publish. By the time that we did the Sofia event, we published an interesting publication that is called Supporting an Innovation Agenda for the Western Balkans. That is available online for any of you that is interested, and you might not, we got a lot of copies that I was happy to see that they flew very quickly in the last event in Sofia. And I'm gonna talk about two other guidebooks that might be useful for these countries. First of all, we are in the process of finalizing two reports. One of them is the Smart Specialization Framework for EU Enlargement and Neighborhood Countries. And the other is the one that I'm going to focus my time on, Smart Specialization in Western Balkans for Potential for Knowledge-Based Economic Cooperation. And here we have worked with the part of my team that is working on Western Balkans, but also with some external experts to focus on this potential for economic cooperation that I think almost every speaker actually this morning has emphasized. I remember many of these morning panelists, including Victor himself, have emphasized the importance of this cooperation and how, all of the countries practically are too small to be able to make, significant differences if they don't connect to value chains, if they don't cooperate. And sometimes we see that, that cooperation, we heard one example this morning that was saying that they sometimes cooperate more with the EU than with countries in the region. So there probably there is something to analyze. And that is what we have tried to do in this publication. So I will go a little bit further. Probably the first thing that you need to do to analyze something like that is to analyze, first of all, what's happening in any country, in every country, in a single country, and then move on to then a most cross-cutting analysis later on. And there we show some of the elements that appear in this report. And there, for example, we show some of the areas of specialization. I've chosen just two countries a bit randomly, so Albania and Bosnia. And there what we compare is, how important these areas are. And you will see the bubbles that are there that represent the different areas that you see on the slide. And these bubbles, the bigger the bubble, the more important is for the economy. As you see there, the size of the bubble measures the relative size of the industry in the national economy. So how important that industry is for the country, for the economy. And you have in the horizontal axis the degree of specialization in terms of employment, and then in terms of turnover on the vertical axis. But okay, what is more interesting in this, and you see, like the different specializations, and you need to kind of do this exercise. I don't mind if you do represent it in a graph or not, but you need to understand this type of analysis when you're doing the analysis of your own country. And I will not focus anymore in the particular experiences of each of the countries, partly also because, okay, we have here representatives that know their countries a lot better than myself. But I will try to focus on the cooperation part. And there, if we analyze the different areas, country by country, we see something interesting that, okay, these are the areas where we have common economic specializations. And some of the areas, such as wholesale, such as non-specialized wholesale trade, retail in other household articles in specialized stores, and you see that there are indeed some common specializations, the ones that you see in the same horizontal line, but also, okay, maybe there are also some, let's say, areas where we might not see so many areas, let's say, where we have the same common economic specialization. So I think it's useful to dig a little deeper and see where this specialization is actually happening. And if we look, first of all, at scientific cooperation, our analysis also ratifies something that Slavo was saying this morning, Slavo Radosevic, that scientific cooperation is indeed happening. And if we look, this figure looks at the 200 most connected organizations in the Western Balkans, and all the dotted countries are basically points where collaboration does exist. And you see the different countries represented by colors. For example, you see Serbia there in blue, Albania in orange, Montenegro in green, in red Bosnia Herzegovina, well, and so on and so forth. And you see, obviously, well, Serbia is the main economy, so you see it very prominent. But also you see that indeed there are many areas where scientific cooperation is indeed happening. So this is already a first conclusion to bear in mind.
Excuse me.
Yes?
That big blue should be big green.
Sorry?
That big blue should be big green.
Okay.
I will explain later.
Okay, so Darko will explain why the big blue might turn green in the future. I'm sure that Victor will try to work so that it doesn't. But okay, there's room for everyone in that cooperation, indeed. Okay, if we dig a little bit deeper, as I was saying, we will see that okay, this cooperation may happen, and it's not the same kind of cooperation in, for example, publications, because when we talk about cooperation, sometimes we stay, in my opinion, a bit too general. But are we cooperating in what? Is this firms cooperating? Is that publications that we're doing together? Is that patents that we're doing together? It is different. And what we see, if we analyze, like you see there the different areas, and you see, for example, in publication that there's a lot of publications in health and well-being, in ICT, in process industries and materials. Well, you have the whole list there. And it's interesting to match them with the cooperation that exists, for example, in patents or in European projects, which are the three areas that I see there. But apart from the actual areas, and you see on the left-hand side of your screen, on the right-hand side of mine, on the left-hand side of the screen behind, actually on the right-hand side for you as well, sorry, you see the different areas, health and well-being being the most prominent one, ICT, etc. But you see also the different colors that I show on that graph. And there it shows the green is publications. You have patents in gray, and you have easy projects in blue. And what you see there is that the green is, okay, massively present, but not so much for patents or for easy projects, which means that cooperation is indeed happening, but a lot of that is based on scientific cooperation, on publications, on more upstream sort of issues in general in terms of cooperation. And we are forgetting, and again, we coincide in our analysis with what Slavo was presenting this morning, that cooperation does exceed less, maybe more when we move on to downstream innovation. We could do this analysis, and I will not be exhaustive in the interest of time, but we have done this analysis for all countries in the regions with the experts that have worked with us in this report. And it's interesting to see you have the first column with the Western Balkans, so the aggregate results, and then the results for each of the countries and the areas. So there, whenever you see all these lines that are connecting the different areas, these are obviously opportunities in terms of potential cooperation in these areas. And again, it's the same kind of topics that I was mentioning before if we move on to aggregate terms, but with some differences, as I mentioned in my very first slide. It is also interesting to do another, deeper exercise of, okay, these are the big areas such as health and well-being or, ICT, but in which particular areas? Because as it also happens in the EU, it might be that we are both, or we are all the countries, working on energy issues, but we might be working on different energy issues. So it is interesting to analyze also which kind of subtopics, and this is what I present in this slide. And for example, if we look at health and well-being, we see that a lot of the specializations, sub-specialization, let's say, are happening in healthcare systems, in, for example, tools, technologies, and digital solutions. So some of the sub-areas are indeed common. And this is interesting because then we are moving into the sub-areas, which are the ones that are more interesting for smart specialization. As we have said, when you prioritize, you have to prioritize so that it's sufficiently narrow and forget about, let's say, big areas. Sectors such as tourism, such as agriculture, you have to make an effort. As a first attempt, it's fine, but then you have to refine a bit further and then identify these particular niches. And this kind of analysis helps you to do that. And there, I identified these sub-areas in terms of all the countries for cooperation. It is also interesting to see if it's more, if these areas that I have presented you are more science-oriented or technology-oriented. And what we find ourselves in for the Western Balkans is that for most of these areas, for example, health and well-being that I was mentioning, or electric and electronic technologies, it tends to be more science-oriented. Again, this corroborates a bit our earlier conclusions than technology-oriented, although there are some and some more that are balanced, that have elements of both, some areas that are kind of in the middle of the slide, and some, although less, on the technology-oriented part that are more related to heavy machinery, sometimes food. Okay, one of my final slides to say that you can do also, like nice combinations of this sort that we have done in the report, where you actually identify the different countries, and for each of the areas, you identify where there is already strong collaboration, and that's you see on the hard lines that link the different countries, or where there is at least intermediate collaboration that you see with the dotted lines, or no collaboration, well, no significant collaboration at least, where you see that the country is isolated, not linked by any line. So there already, by doing this kind of analysis, you have on the table the elements that will help you to, first of all, see in which particular area does it make sense to collaborate, first of all. Second of all, in which particular areas can we collaborate? And third, which kind of collaboration is already taking place and which do we want to spur in the future? Okay, so this has been a bit a brush. Maybe I will skip this one. This is revealed comparative advantage exports to see also, the external side that is also very important in terms of smart specialization. Maybe this one quickly, because it was an issue that was raised this morning in terms of the participation of these economies in global value chains. And this slide is actually a bit more positive that we've said this morning, in the sense that we see here global value chain participation rate in 3 different periods. In 1990, that is there on with the blue bar. It's represented by the blue bar. In 2000, which is represented by the orange bar, and the gray bar is it's represented the latest data available, so for 2018. And there we see that in practically all countries, well, in all countries, we can say there has been progress, significant progress, I would say, in terms of global value chain participation. And you see the aggregate for the Western Balkans, which is, at a quite good rate, actually, in terms of the progress that has happened. In terms of the overall figure for the Western Balkans, it has moved from 49% in 1990 to 58% in the 2000s, and then by 2018 we had already moved to 65%. Well, this is basically a bit of the same picture, looking at how important the foreign value added is and the domestic value added, and there probably, well, it is important to note, well, in the case of Montenegro, for example, this more balanced participation, but you can see that in all of them, it is important to bear in mind these 2 elements. So not to forget also the foreign value added, because it will bring out a lot to our economy. I think I will leave it there. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope that it was interesting and informative, and that it also tries to contribute to the debate that we might be having on some of these issues later on. And now I will leave you with the very, very interesting presentations, well, rather than presentations, interventions from our 3 speakers, focusing on the topics that I've mentioned. So thank you very much for your attention. Okay, so I change hats again and come back to my role of chair. And I would want to give the word first in the order that you saw in the agenda to Viktor Nedovic, with whom you've heard about his reflections this morning on a more general note. But now I have asked Viktor to reflect a little bit on the questions that I have outlined at the beginning. So Viktor, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Manuel. I would like first to comment just a bit your presentation. It was really something that where JRC again declare themselves as institution that is trying to help and support us a lot. It is, I suppose, this analysis you did in the meantime will be the part of the documents you presented to us on one of the slides, the new ones, I mean. And what I would like also is to learn later a bit more about all different sources you used to prepare all of this analysis for us. Thank you for that very much. Yes, you indicated in your slides that evidence is so important, and that all we are doing related to decision-making process should be based on evidence. It was so important, it is still very important for the development of the smart specialization strategy, but as you mentioned, we will meet soon in Belgrade on 10th and 11th of July. I would like just to mention that a smart specialization strategy is one important, but just one of very wise products, if I may say like that, of JRC. We are on 10th of July. We are organizing for the first time in the country that is not EU member state event called Science Meets Parliament, with the wish to argue, to document, to present to the parliamentarians how important evidence is for their decisions. And again, in the very strong cooperation with you, with JRC in general, and on that occasion we will use another day for this meeting related to the Smart Specialization Strategy progress. Thank you for that as well. It is it is not just information. It has the aim to attract the others to discuss with JRC and to perform. We still don't have experience. We will have after 10th of July, but up to now it's going rather well. But going back to the topics for this afternoon discussion, you asked us about at the beginning about the difficulties we faced along the process. Actually, each stage of the smart specialization strategy has a kind of difficulties we tried in cooperation with different stakeholders, with JRC, with the European Commission, sometimes by ourselves to solve. That means right from the beginning, in the sense of the first stage communication among the governmental stakeholders about the importance of the strategy itself. It is not easy to, it wasn't easy to convince at the beginning the other governmental stakeholders and to argue on the probably proper way why smart specialization strategy is so important to do the exercise even before the full membership in European Union, even before we have approach to the funds of European Union for the implementation of the strategy. And it was the first challenge we faced, and along the time we developed excellent cooperation with other stakeholders in the government and created this intergovernmental working body to govern the process of the smart specialization in Serbia, but it was for sure challenge at the beginning. But communication remained as a challenge all along the whole process of the smart specialization. Then when we designed the EDP process, communication with the stakeholders, insufficient cooperation in between the actors of quadruple helix. It was, again, something very challenging. Then identifying, selecting the people who will lead the process on the ground, our ambassadors in that sense, the people with the potential to ensure the participation of the other stakeholders in EDP was something in addition to that. That means it was the challenge starting from the communication and going to some very concrete activities. We all the time we communicated with JRC about all of these issues, but also with our colleagues at each meeting we had together, and in parallel with that as well. Maybe the future important challenge is related to the implementation of the strategy. I already mentioned in the morning that we reserve, we secure some of the funds for the implementation. We are doing this also in the cooperation with the European Commission along the programming of IPA 2019-2020, but still it is IPA that is directed to the government for all different sectors. We would like to have a kind of regional approach on behalf of the European Commission, on behalf, if you want, DG NEAR, towards future implementation of the strategy itself in the region. That means not to try only to secure a part of the national IPA for that, but to have something else in addition to that. It could be done through IPA, through reprogramming of IPA 2, but also in parallel with programming of IPA 3. Concerning some specific challenges, I think a lot of the economies in the region are facing very similar ones. Serbia started, as it is also stated in your slide, as the first country that is not a member state with this process. And we tried to have a very dynamic process, but it wasn't easy. In particular, it wasn't easy when we decided to merge these two different processes and to cooperate a lot. And I mean, industrial strategy and smart specialization strategy. That means after we already defined mandates of different stakeholders included in the process, we revised that. And it was the process of several months, just to revise the mandates of different stakeholders included in the process of smart specialization, trying to use the smart specialization process also to be of use, of value for the industrial policy development. And in addition to that, something that is in common probably for all of us is the weak link in between the research and economy community. We are trying to create the ecosystem that is supportive to this development. We are, as I mentioned in the morning, we are in the huge reform process. At this very moment, we are working on the strategy of education and research 2030. We finalized recently the law on science fund. We are finalizing at the moment the law on science and research. We will work soon. We started, but we will work soon with more dedication on the law on innovation. We created the new entity in the system, Science Fund. We are continuing to work and to push and to support the future work of the Innovation Fund. We developed there are several instruments to support this cooperation between research sector and business one, like mini grants, matching grants, collaborative grant scheme, innovation voucher, TTF means technology transfer facility, as umbrella organization for the supporting of commercialization of the knowledge and technology gained at the university towards the business, and we are developing now acceleration mechanism for the future support of the companies that are already granted by Innovation Fund. In addition to that, Science Technology Park in Belgrade, plus soon we will finalize the works on Science Technology Park in Novi Sad. We started to build up similar in Niš, plus Čačak, plus soon in Kragujevac. That means all of this is creating a kind of environment to support this collaboration. What else you ask for? It is the place of the strategy. If I say what we are doing, I already mentioned what all, not all maybe, but a lot we are doing at this very moment. You see how important for us is to place these policies on the right place in the society. That means to be a kind of support for the society challenges, for different issues the society is facing. That means we changed the model of financing of science. We will introduce institutional one, for which each research institution will provide a kind of agreed product for the society. Plus, we will have a very competitive one, top-down, with some particular issues we are facing to be provided by scientific research to help society on that way as well. That means maybe we are not far, but we are trying to manage it. And the future role of smart specialization is there. It means that it is already recognized by the communities, it is recognized by the laws we are preparing, and this prioritization should push some of the priority areas much more for the future relevance, and not only on the national level, but also on the international one. Yes, you asked, I already mentioned that our smart specialization is now well embedded and connected with industrial policy concerning entrepreneurship and digitalization. Both of them are representing the horizontal measures in the strategy, and it is emphasized by almost all stakeholders included in the process that should be push more in the future, like horizontal ones. And the final one related to the cross-sectorial dimension. It was your last question. Cross-sectorial dimension has been one of the important discussing topics within the EDP workshops in my country. The special attention has been put on cross-innovation and collaboration potential between priority areas. Identify cross-sectoral collaboration within EDP workshops will be supported within policy mix instruments we are developing right now, and are already under consideration among different policymakers in Serbia. That means not only Ministry of that is dedicated to science and research will contribute to that, but we are discussing on the governmental level also with other ministries to contribute from their side. That means their role will be to propose the financial instruments for supporting identified cross-innovation, collaboration, and business opportunities and initiatives in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victor, for your very interesting reflections. I think we will allow for the 3 interventions first, and then we can start a debate between us and also obviously the audience when we finish that. So Darko, the floor is now all yours, and you can explain all about the bubbles. And you can, as I mentioned at the beginning, you can address, you don't need to be exhaustive, you can address the couple of issues that you find more relevant in terms of the questions that you feel that are more relevant in the case of Montenegro.
Thank you very much. I will focus on your questions, and I will try to answer it directly from practical point of view. Basically, due to this process of smart specialization takes a long time and have a couple of very important phases that we have to go through to have a final smart specialization adopted at every level. I have to emphasize that this smart specialization strategy has to be accepted at the national level, and then also a European Commission should approve it. So we are in the position that hopefully on Thursday our strategy will be adopted on national level, and then we will start with the process discussing it with European Commission. Basically, I will start with the first question about the difficulties. Considering the fact that it's quite long and elaborate process, there are many problems that we face, but I will just focus on a couple of them for curiosity's sake. And basically, first one was already mentioned, and that is understanding and accepting S3 concept. that was very important to all our main stakeholders and actors in this process to understand and accept a concept of smart specialization strategy and also to understand its value. However, that was a sweet and sour experience because once they understood what concept is and what is advantage to be part of smart specialization strategy, then we had to resolve some issues and to avoid compromises when choosing priority domains because everybody wanted to be part of the game and basically to push forward with their own agenda and to select priorities. Everybody wants to be priority. And also that is the very important part where we have to focus and do really rigorous process of selection and we succeeded in that. Also, it is important to mention and repeat basically that this is evidence-based process. Evidence-based, that means statistics at the beginning. So, and of course, as many other countries have a problem with statistics, we had some issues with statistic because it is on such a detailed level so that we had to use national and international sources. So that's something to look at from that point of view. There are so many other things, but I will carry forward in interest of time. So basically, it is very important to understand that second part of 20th century and first part of 21st century is characterized by speed of change, not by change. Definitely there is a lot of change in science, innovation, and technology. Just to remind you that in 20th century we have a car being invented, airplane, nuclear technology, space industry, so many advances in health industry, and basically molecular biology and so on. So it is very difficult to follow all those technological changes and the impact on economy, on our society, as was mentioned in previous presentations. So S3 strategy is basically allowing, it's very powerful tool for public administration to understand what is out there and how to change and improve policy to really follow that technological advancements and take advantage of it in terms of development of economy and society as a whole. So in terms of Montenegro, we are such a small country in size and also in human resources, so we have to tailor smart specialization in terms of our priorities and potential that we have. And we are grateful for JRC that they helped us to go through that process with their advisors and also with any other means. So far it was been a long journey, almost 2 years, and I couldn't say enough about support from that side. And as a result of that, we are very close to achieve our goal. I will move to the next question, and that is the role of research and innovation. Basically, research innovation has been traditionally connected also with academia, but in recent decades, it was strong push, especially in Europe, to connect academia and business sector. But recently, it is not going from A to B. That means from academia to business. But now we are seeing that trend to goes from business to academia. So it is demand-driven research. Demand-driven research is proven to produce faster and better innovations. And basically, that's something that smart specialization can provide for us, because it is obvious that from business, from private investments, they are more pragmatic and they are producing better and faster results. And that's something that we have to have in mind and be aware that the role of research innovation is changing, and we have to adapt to that change, and that was reflected in framework programs in FP7, but more in Horizon 2020 and also to some initiatives like Eureka, Eurostar specifically, and so on. So that was the third question. And then fourth question is about S3 and their relationship with other initiatives and strategies in Montenegro, and generally speaking, smart specialization strategy should be based on industrial policy, science and research policy, innovation policy, and any other policies that are related to industry, research and innovation and economy. But we also did thorough analysis on many other strategies in country, and in addition to the strategies of priority domains that we have chosen. So basically, we would like to smart specialization strategy to create innovative ecosystem that will help economic transformation of the country with help of research and innovation. So definitely, so this is synergy between smart specialization strategy and those strategies that I mentioned, industrial policy, science, research, and innovation. And to some degree, it will be replaced and go together with them. We were lucky, actually, that industrial policy was updated just recently, so that we can follow up that change and improve our smart specialization strategy accordingly. So definitely that added some additional value to our smart specialization strategy. And also to the last question that was asked about integration of cross-sectoral dimension of S3. That cross-sectoral dimension was recognized through priorities, mainly through horizontal priority, which in our case that is ICT. Usually, not always, is not always the case, but common practice is that key enabling technologies are playing that part of cross-sectoral dimensions, but also we were closely examining synergies between sectors and how they impact each other, and basically to find out what is emerging and what is converging in terms of sectors and priority domains that we selected. So that will be, in a nutshell, answers to those 5 questions, but we can go forward with some more questions from audience and from panelists. Thank you.
Okay, so jokes aside, let's continue. So thank you very much for your, again, very interesting contribution to the debate. We have a lot of food for thought already with 2 interventions. And now is time for Jasmina to tell us a little bit her reflections on these issues, and then I will open the floor for your questions, I think, on these interesting interventions.
Thank you very much. So the Republic of North Macedonia is also on the road on development of the smart specialization strategy. We have established the communication with GRC and launched the process. I have to say that with regards to this comprehensive and complex strategy, there is a commitment in the government, and it is very nice that with us today is our Deputy Minister of Education and Science, showing the political commitment, because this is the first precondition actually for further support and in the development of the strategy. Working group was established as interministerial working group, and there were 3 universities in the group. And the group was extended with the representatives from the Chamber of Commerce and different institutes and Academy of Science. So I have to say that the working group is led by the Ministry of Education and Science and Ministry of Economy jointly. And there is one smaller team of the working group that we are trying to coordinate on everyday basis all these activities that are related to the launching the process of the smart specialization. It is a real pleasure, and it is very nice that these events are happening, where we are getting a lot of information from the more advanced countries like Montenegro and Serbia, Congratulations for the Montenegro for the completed job, and also from the European Commission, because European countries, because this is really very, very challenging activity. How to start, how to coordinate, how to involve all these stakeholders. So with regards to the difficulties, I can say more these are challenges from the very beginning within the process. First, the dilemma was how to involve all stakeholders, how to identify and involve all stakeholders and participants that have the knowledge, that have the information, and then that can contribute in the working of the S3 working group in the leading the process. And the second very big challenge that we are facing is the mapping of the economic, innovative, and research capacities. Because this is actually should be based on the statistical data and should be based on the identification of the potentials that are existing in the country in order to select the first draft of the domains that are going to be further developed. So we faced the problem that the State Statistical Office didn't have this NATSE 3 and 4 digits data on the regional level. So with consultation with the GRC and with the expert, Mr. Hugo Hollanders, that was helping us, there is a big gratitude to the Montenegro and Serbia that they have helped us in providing the data and in the process of the mapping in order to map with more countries from more sites in order to identify what are the domains for the specialization. So we are aware that we are going to face further challenges, especially in the process of the EDP and how to involve and to hear the voice from the business, because at the end, all these strategies should live in life, and actually the business should find their interest. With regards to the challenges for the country and the role of the smart specialization, I have to say that the Republic of Macedonia has a vision to be member of the EU and NATO. So we are following all these recommendations and we are all these strategies. Smart specialization is linked to the chapter 20 and chapter 25. In these chapters, we are moderately and good prepared, and even the smart specialization strategy is presented in the latest progress report from the European Commission as one obligation that we should do. I have to say that the governmental policies are focusing on strengthening the competitiveness of the economy based on knowledge and innovation. That means that a lot of documents, strategic documents, were developed in recent years following the EU communications, following the EU strategies, and based on the situation on the field. So last year we have adopted the new industrial strategy, SME strategy, third action plan for implementation of the innovation strategy. There is a competitiveness strategy, and there are a lot of changes and initiatives for improving the education system. There was a new law on higher education. There is a new law on elementary education that is in preparation. So there are a lot of activities that should be done and have a closer link to the smart specialization. In order to say that, as a good example that I would like to share, is that, for example, industrial policy, it is talking about how to support the industry as a driver for growth, how to create a competitive industry that will be export-oriented with a higher diversification of the production, evolving in the global value chains, then how to create higher productivity, higher value-added products, how to transfer technology in the manufacturing industry, how to improve the skills. So all these measures are already projected and should be implemented by different institutions. So the focus is on supporting investment, technology transfer, export, and linking the companies with the foreign direct investments. With regards to the innovation policy, I have to say that this is one very well and high ranked in all these reports that we receive from the Small Business Act, from the Competitiveness Outlook, where the political commitment and support show that this policy can be a real driver for further growth of the country. In 2012, there was an industrial innovation policy was adopted. In 2013, a law on innovation activity was adopted, and in 2013, we also created the fund as a key fund for innovation and technology development as a key institution and leader in the innovation ecosystem. So I have to say that they are very successful because they have a strong support also from the World Bank and from the budget, with a high amount of money and supporting the new instruments that for first time like a support given to the companies in order to improve their innovation. So they have instruments for support or startup and spin-offs, for technology extension. They have supported creation of accelerators. So there is a project for supporting creation of new technology transfer office, and also the science technology park that will be soon be established. Also, it is very relevant to mention that in the country there are 24 universities. From these, 6 are state-owned and 18 are private. So there are good examples that how universities are developing in the way to work more on R&D and on innovation. So there is Innovate is one center for technology transfer and innovation as a good example that are on the Electro faculty in Skopje. They have created this center trying to link the R&D and innovation with the companies, actually linking the research with the business and helping to the students to create new ideas and to implement them into the reality. Also, there are initiatives at the Southeast European University in Tetovo and also in Bitola. So there are good examples as the pioneers where should be the future and how to realize and to implement this vision for smart growth. There are many activities, but with the smart specialization, we are improving the communication, collaboration, and exchange of all this information. Because at this very same moment, there is a mapping of the innovation ecosystem. So this analysis will show how the innovation system can be improved, how this innovation ecosystem can have a greater impact on the economic growth. Also, there is a process for mapping of R&D infrastructure. And I have to say that we have followed the model of Romania, where the Faculty of Information Society are developing some web platform where very easily you can identify all universities and all the services they are offering and all the capacities for research and development. So we are aware that there are a lot of activities that should be improved for creating new skills, because once the domains are going to be identified, there should be needed a coordination activity in order to link the industrial policy, the SME policy, FDI policy actually, and the skills policy in order to have a greater value added in all these strategic documents that are running separately and are implemented by different institutions. So I want to say also that the very important support is given by GRC, but also there are other donors and especially IPA funds that should be envisaged as a potential source for financing the implementation of the smart specialization and strengthening the institutional capacity, because without strong institutions that are going to implement and help us to implement these domains, to develop further the domains, these are going to be very hard. It was nice that Slovenian colleague explained these SRIP as platforms where they are connecting all the people and all the institutions involved in these domains. What should be also mentioned that these smart specialization platforms offer, instead of national smart specialization strategy, this is actually sectoral smart specialization. And these platforms, I think that should the European Commission, when we had this screening meeting, mention that they're open for our countries to be involved. So we have informed our clusters that they can see and they can try to be involved in some way with these smart specialization platforms, especially for energy, for food production, for textile. They are looking for very, very advanced, but the first step is to be involved, to hear the best practices and to start collaboration on the high level. So what is also relevant to be mentioned, that Horizon and COSME should be seen also as a potential for support. And about this cross-sectoral, I think that smart specialization definitely is transformation matrix. So adding value to the existing strategies and to the existing potentials. Definitely, it will create new potentials. We are going to see what will appear after the first mapping and what are going to be the domains. But I think that they are going to be similar to the domains that are selected by our neighbor countries, because there is the potential actually in these sectors that we have capacity for growth, but also should be foreseen the possibility for regional cooperation in these platforms, because everybody has some how to say, fortune, but if we collect that, if we work together, we can be much stronger. Monitoring and evaluation, cooperation and coordination are also challenges that should be improved in the future. And also we have to be aware that there is a big changing world about globalization and digitalization of the industry that also should have impact on our industries, and further on in our selection of the domains and development of these domains in reality. So I think that I covered most of the topics that were presented.
Indeed, thank you very much. So thank you very much, Jasmina. So I think the three speakers have put on the table a lot of issues. So there's a lot of food for thought. Probably it has provoked your reaction. I will now open the. I have, let's say, questions or comments myself, but I would prefer first of all to open the floor to you to see if you have any questions. But before doing that, I wouldn't want to forget, as I did at the beginning, to say that, okay, the work that I have presented has been jointly done with the experts, one of them Hugo Hollanders, who is right there, so I do mention explicitly, and Cities Academic as well, that are part of this work, and some of our best experts are always inspiring for the work that we do, so thank you very much. Okay, without further ado, then I would open the floor to see if there are any questions for our speakers. Nina? Maybe there's a micro coming. There.
Okay, hello again once more. I'm Nina from Montenegro Street team. Obviously, my question would not address the representative of Montenegro Street team, but I would rather make a question referred to the other two representatives, as they mentioned an issue, exactly one policy instrument that should be as well put it in the function in line with smart specialization. And since Montenegro is considering establishment of the similar instrument, maybe they could share, especially the Serbian representative, more in-depth view regarding that instrument, and that is the establishment of the Fund for Research and Investments and Innovation. What are according to your current view of that new instrument or institution at the same time, are the framework conditions for functioning of that institution in the sense of how you intend to gather funds and how you intend to spend funds? Are these going to be spent in the form of grant schemes or in the form of investments? What is the basic idea behind the whole thing? Because we already heard some framework conditions which can be encountered in relation to the similar instrument in Macedonia. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Nina. I don't know if there are any more questions. If there are more questions, I would prefer to group them. So up there.
Good afternoon. My name is Violeta Tanasovska. I come from the Ministry of Education and Science in Macedonia. And my question would be for Mr. Petrušić from Montenegro. First of all, I would like to congratulate our Montenegrin colleagues on the extremely well done job with the smart specialization strategy. And my question is, exactly about it? Well, you are the champions, I think, in the fast preparation of the strategy. I don't think any other country managed to do it in such a short time. So my question would be if it is possible for us to get more explicitly information about the process, how you started it, how you led it, how GRC helped you, how did you provide the funds, how did the process go, how did you manage to do these things so quickly? Thank you.
Okay, any other question there?
If I
Ramayus?
may, yes. Hi, nice seeing everybody on the same stage. I have a question for all the participants of the discussion. Please tell me and let the audience know, during your mapping phase, during your EDP phase, and during your phase of choosing the priorities, did you look for the outward dimension? Because you already spoke about some synergies between the Western Balkans. So what were the methods, or are any plans to look for this dimension? Because in many studies by GRC, and not only limited to GRC, almost all European member countries are lacking this dimension. And I think that there is a great potential in Western Balkans to fix this. Thank you.
Okay, any other question? I would allow one more if there is. No? Okay, we have enough in our bags anyway. Okay, so there are 3 questions. Maybe let's do them in that order. So there was a first question from Nina on the instrument, basically. I think more addressed to Victor and Jasmina. So any of the two have?
Thank you, Manuel. Thank you, Nina, for the question. Concerning the mix of the instruments, we are in the stage we are defining this mix at this very moment. But we already consider on the level of several ministers along the process, particularly along the EDP process, because we didn't want to open EDP process without any very concrete idea how we will implement the activities starting from the next year. For that reason, we open this as a question, as an issue on the level of the different ministries. We also involved the cabinet of the Prime Minister in that, and we had one very concrete activity top-down at that time, just to see based on already defined priorities at that stage, which ministries and or which way will answer those future implementation of the strategy. We sum up this and we provide information to the stakeholders along the process. Concerning very concrete ones that are coming from our ministry, these are related to the activities of the Innovation Fund, that is institution which already developed, as I already mentioned in previous intervention, several different instruments, but at this very moment all of them are implemented on a very horizontal way. That means in the future activities, instrument by instrument, we will still discuss with which one we will start, will be dedicated to the priorities of smart specialization. As additional argument that this kind of, it will be grant-based, the most of them. As additional argument for that, when we analyzed all supported projects up to now, from 2011 till 2019 by Innovation Fund, the most of the supported project, probably not only by chance, actually are in the priority areas that are already chosen during the EDP process. That means we will just kind of formalize it, and future activities of Innovation Fund will be related to the priority areas. Concerning the Science Fund, it is new, very young entity in the system. We prepared starting from the last year. We prepared the law on Science Fund. Something like 11 different programs are foreseen to be supported by Science Fund. And in this discussion at that period, at that time, we are trying to consider which programs are naturally connected with the implementation of the Smart Specialization Strategy. And in several of them, we already make this connection with the future Smart Specialization Strategy to be implemented by those programs. That means it will be a kind of connection in between of future activities of the Science Fund and implementation of the Smart Specialization. I would like to emphasize that we will celebrate 100 days of existence of Science Fund on 21st, last day of this week, 21st of June. And we will already at that day publish the first call of the Science Fund that will be not connected exclusively with the Smart Specialization Strategy, but will be directed to the young researchers. What we would like to send the science, to the message to young researchers in the community, and we already assured the budget for that, and it will be like ERC grants, a smaller size that will be actually granted by Science Fund. Up to the end of the year, we will have 2 calls more. One will be related to the cooperation with our diaspora, and the third one will be related to the artificial intelligence. But starting from the next year, we will prepare the new calls along of this finalization of the process of the development of Smart Specialization Strategy itself. Starting from the next year, we will try to merge and to connect future calls with the priorities of the Smart Specialization Strategy.
With regards to the Republic of Macedonia, so the Fund for Innovation and Technology Development was established with the law on innovation activity. I have to say that they are very strong and very strong player in the innovation ecosystem. They have support from the World Bank, so it was a World Bank loan in the institutional capacity and development of the instruments. So they have these 4 instruments for startup and spin-off, so commercialization of the innovation, for technology transfer, and for they have created a set of accelerators. 4 accelerators were supported through the fund. And I have to say that with the mapping that was done for innovation ecosystem, there are envisaged some changes in the instruments with the structure and what are going to be, how they should grow further and become more and more active player. But they also have a set of instruments supported by the government that is for the supporting of the innovation by the SMEs. As well, they are very active in promoting new projects like engaging the students, young researchers, or they're supporting some concrete topic for concrete projects. So I would like to say that they're also involved in the activities for designing the Science Technology Park and National Technology Transfer Office. So they're a real leader on the market in that field. But luckily we have one colleague from the Fund for Innovation and Technology here with us. So maybe on the break you can discuss in more details, because as I know, till now they were giving the grants. They were giving grants, but there are some changes according to the World Bank recommendations for the structure, what level should be grant and what level they should give back to the fund if they're successful. But in these details, you can talk later on with my colleague. Thank you.
Okay. We are running out of time, so I would appreciate short answers to the couple of questions that are left. The second one was very explicitly addressed to Darko about the Montenegrin experience.
Thank you. Thank you very much for kind words. Basically, actually my answer should be the longest one, but I will try to make it short very quickly. During this process of creation of smart specialization strategy, we have had 62 workshops, seminars, and meetings. More than 300 participants, 50%, more than 50% were from business sector, and we also had help from 8 external experts, half of them paid by JRC, half of them paid from national budget of Montenegro. That is in a nutshell what is in statistically talking. But basically, first step of creation of strategy is to establish the organizational structure within on national level. That means to create operational team. In our case, that was team from Ministry of Science and Ministry of Economy, although team of Ministry of Science was leading and most active in this process. And also very important thing is to create an interministerial or interagency group which was used as a board of directors for that process. And then you basically start collecting all information, analyzing industrial policy strategy, scientific and research strategy, innovation strategy, and all other strategies that you have within the country, together with operational team and interministerial group. And then you start with quantitative analysis. Basically, that was first important step. And once you've done quantitative analysis, then you have identified initial priority sectors, and usually there are too many. And then you go through process of qualitative analysis, where you justify or reduce number of priorities, and that is the first stage. Second stage, but then that is entry point for EDP process. The most important part of the smart specialization strategy is EDP process, because you get engaged with business sector, with civil sector, with society and people, and basically to hear what they think about that preliminary selection. And usually is the case that you have to reduce them, you have to merge them. You basically, as I said before, you have to find what is emerging, what is converging, and that was the case. That was the case in creation of Montenegro smart specialization strategy. And then when that is completed, then you start writing strategy and also going through that continuous EDP process until basically you come up with final document. That is in a nutshell, but it takes time, it takes a lot of efforts, a lot of people involved, a lot of different opinions, and also we also tested our results and compared them with Adriatic Union, draft of Adriatic Union smart specialization strategy that is still ongoing. And basically somewhere in March, beginning of March, we went to Zagreb for the meeting, and we realized that our findings are basically matching to high degree with proposed draft Adriatic Union strategy. So that was the answer for the first and from the second and third question. So I can talk about it in hours, but I think we don't have a time, and I just summarize it quite quickly, rather quickly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know if someone wants to add something. I think it's a very interesting question from Ramoyus, but I would ask you to be, like a 20-second or 30-second answer, not more than the outward dimension, basically, on the outward dimension of the strategy, so elements also of cooperation, etc. If you want to say something briefly, otherwise we can discuss over coffee, because I don't want to be responsible for you not having coffee. And then we will restart the next session at 5 o'clock. So if you have a quick reaction to that one, I would allow it.
I just want to
otherwise-
say that we have discussed the same topic in Montenegro. Actually, it was a nice opportunity when Montenegro were presenting their domains and where are possibilities for collaboration with our countries. So I think that in all fields that were presented, there are synergies and there can be find further opportunities for collaboration and growing the value added in the region and in the individual countries.
Yeah, it is still something that should be discussed further on, and the next occasion will be probably at the meeting we will organize in Belgrade. I hope before the end of the year, where we will have more data to be discussed from different regions, from different economies.
Okay, so thank you very much to the three speakers, and I would like you to join me in a warm round of applause for the three, not only for the excellent interventions, but also for the work they are doing on smart specialization. So, thank you very much to you all. We have now a very quick coffee break. I would ask you to be back for a very interesting session that my colleague Nicola will moderate, starting at 5 sharp. So it will be a quick coffee, kind of grab a coffee almost and come back. So you have about 10 minutes for a quick coffee toilet break, and then we're back at 5. Thank you very much.
Otherwise, we'll go into 6:30.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, actually the last people standing, welcome back for the final part of the parallel session on smart specialization, which will talk about the achievements and challenges in the economic transformation of the Southeast European countries. Before we begin, you have heard a lot about the progress of Western Balkan countries today, about the progress in the smart specialization process, and it has been tremendous, really. We have been following it for a while, and we are now safe to say that this will conclude the encircle practically all the Eastern European, Southeast European countries in initiating or completing smart specialization strategy. You have also heard a lot about smart specialization concept, the challenges, and the relevance to other innovation policy documents and initiatives. And now we will listen about the future of smart specialization, about the necessity of evidence-based analysis, the need of appropriate data, the effect that smart specialization has on regional innovation ecosystems, and the capacity of Western Balkan countries to, and Southeast European countries in total to go with the efficient implementation of smart specialization. Before we begin, we will have 5 presentations of our guests, and I'm deeply honored to present our special guest for today. We have from my right side Mr. Nikola Imi. You have already heard him. Nikola Imi is Deputy Head of Unit from the Director General for Regional and Urban Policy of the European Commission. Then we have Mr. Hugo Hollanders, Senior Researcher from the University of Maastricht. Ramojus Reimeris, Head of Innovation Policy Unit from Mosta, Lithuania. And my fellow colleagues from JRC Seville, Marina Ranga and Aleš Gnamuš, Scientific Policy Officers. My name is Nikola Radovanovic. I'll be moderating this session. And as I said, we will have 5 presentations, and this would allow us to have some additional questions afterwards. So without further delay, I would give floor to Mr. Nikola Imi.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I see that my pen is still here. I was looking for it. I will be short, so I will try to present in a nutshell what is the link between cohesion policy and smart specialization. So you are knowledgeable, of course, about smart specialization. You know also what cohesion policy is all about. It's not only money, it's quite a lot of money. It's in particular about achieving a good impact on the economy and creating jobs and boosting growth. But to give you an idea, the cohesion policy envelope is in the order of billion of euros. So for the next financing perspective, for the next programming period, we are talking of about 370 billion euro of European Regional Development Fund and Cohesion Fund, but also of European Social Fund. And for the current programming period, 14-20, the magnitude is more or less the same. And a lot of this money is supposed to go into research and innovation, support to small, medium enterprises, digital skill. So in the domain, if you like, of smart specialization strategies. I will go now quickly to, I will come back to the other slide, but just to remind us a bit what is the scope of support of the European Regional Development Fund. I work in Director General for Regional Policy, so specifically with ERDF and the Cohesion Fund. And ERDF supports investment in infrastructure, so road, railways, wastewater treatment plants, but also research infrastructure, investment in access to services, support to small and medium-sized enterprises, intangible assets, and then there is a lot also of soft activities, technical assistance to support the work of the authorities and the beneficiaries, information, communication, monitoring, and evaluation activity. As I mentioned before, ERDF is focused mainly, when we talk about enterprises, to small and medium-sized enterprises, because these are the companies which need support. But exceptionally, it can also support large enterprises in case, for example, when they cooperate with SMEs. Now, going back to the start of my presentation, I just would like to give you some information, and going back to the cohesion policy envelope. So, as I said before, 100 billion, and differently from the past, we tried already in this programming period, and even more in the future, to concentrate the resources in a few fields. And in particular, talking of the next programming period, 2021-2027, the amount of money that will have to be invested in so-called policy objective 1, that is Smarter Europe, is very significant, from 35% to 45%, depending on the relative weight of the member state. Europe, as we know, is a world-class research and strong industries, but underperforms in turning excellence into success. You can see here that the number of unicorn startups is very low in Europe compared to, for example, China and United States. Another problem is that the amount that is invested by public authorities in research and innovation as a percentage of GDP is low. Again, as compared to other big economies like United States, Japan, or South Korea, as you can see in these slides. Here I am. In Europe, there are significant disparities in innovation capacity. In this map, you can see the regional innovation scoreboard, where the region in red and orange, so most of the region in Southeast Europe, are the ones who are moderate innovator, whereas the regions in blue and dark green are the innovator and the frontliner. Also, in terms of productivity dynamics, as you can see, there are huge differences in Europe. In black, you can see the frontrunner, the frontier, and in the diverging region are the one with the lines. The Council conclusion recently has stressed the importance of an industrial policy strategy. We discussed at length this morning the link between industrial policy strategies and smart specialization strategies, and stressed in particular the importance of ensuring a strong European industrial value chains in the global context, the importance of developing pan-European integrated industrial projects, and also to cooperate and to blend the national, regional, and local efforts in order to have the right impact on the economy and on the smart specialization strategy in particular. Now, coming back to cohesion policy, we started addressing the issue of smart specialization strategy in the current programming period. It's not that before we were just ignoring it, but we were not formally recognizing. We were investing in research and innovation based on call for proposal, but without paying attention to the overall strategy. For the first time in the current programming period, we have agreed with the member states, so with the budgetary authorities, first of all, to have the right conditions in place before starting investing. And that conditions were called, and are still called for the current programming period, ex-ante conditionality, which will become enabling conditions for the future programming period. The concept is the same, but there is in particular, one significant difference. That is, the ex-ante conditionality in the current programming period had to be fulfilled in the beginning, before starting the investment, and before processing payments to beneficiaries. And then there was no formal obligations to monitor and to update the strategies. It was basically left voluntarily to the member states. In some cases it worked, in some other cases it didn't work. So for the current programming period, the enabling condition, that is the continuation of the ex-ante conditionality, the fulfillment of the enabling condition will have to be ensured throughout the programming period. It will be the responsibility of the member states to ensure that. So here, concept that we have recalled already this morning and this afternoon, early this afternoon, that is pillars on which smart specialization is based. It's a dynamic process, as we said. It's evidence-based, embedded in local economy. They need to concentrate. Some figures I've already mentioned before. So huge amount of money that needs to be spent on the basis of smart specialization strategies. This is to give you a picture of what will be the area of investment for the European Regional Development Fund and the Cohesion Fund in the next programming period. We call policy objective 5 policy objectives, so a reduced number compared to the present. The first one, the one that we are discussing today, in fact, is a smarter Europe. So investing in innovative and smart economic transformation. The other, you can see, greener, low-carbon Europe, more connected Europe, so transport and ICT connectivity, more social Europe, funded by the European Social Fund in particular, and a Europe closer to citizens that has a territorial dimension. Here is, you can see the smart specialization strategies in the center of policy objective 1, Smarter Europe. Around smart specialization strategies, we have investment in research and innovation. We have support to small, medium enterprises, growth and competitiveness. So not calls, generic calls, but the idea is to support only the enterprises which are included in the smart specialization strategy of the country or of the regions. And then also important, upgrading of skills and digitization of governments, companies, and citizens will have to be embedded in the smart specialization strategies. So now, since I'm almost finished my time, I would just like to mention what are the enabling conditions for the smart specialization strategy. And the enabling condition you can see at the right side of the slide. We need to have a good governance of national or regional smart specialization strategy. What does it mean, good governance? This is explained in the fulfillment criteria that the member states and the regions will have to comply with before starting investments. If they don't, if those criteria are not fulfilled, then the payments will not be able to flow from the Commission to the member states. I've just to explain that these enabling conditions are currently as the whole package of the future legislation subject of negotiations with the budgetary authorities, with the Parliament and the Council. It might in the end have a different shape, but the concept will remain the same. Some of these enabling conditions, in particular the existence of competent regional national institutions, the monitoring and evaluation tools to measure performance, the effective functioning of the EDP, were already ex-ante conditionality. We have proposed to add some other, in particular the update of the analysis of the bottlenecks. It seems quite natural, of course. It was obvious requirement. and then actions necessary to improve nation regional research and innovation system, to manage industrial transition, and measures for international collaborations. Now, I will finish my presentation just to mention the fact that we, in parallel with the smart specialization strategies, we have also implemented pilot action in some of the European regions which were experiencing deindustrialization and industrial transition. And these pilot action were strictly linked to the smart specialization strategies in place. One last concept. We discussed at length this morning the importance of interregional and international cooperation. We realize sometimes that it's difficult, and we had direct experience this morning to achieve this. So with the interregional innovation investments, the Commission would like to further facilitate the process. As you can see under how, these interregional innovation investments, so involving more member states or more regions, would be implementing under direct management or indirect management, meaning by the Commission services or by IFIs or agency under the supervision of the Commission. Why? Because we think that it could be easier to coordinate, because some of the issue like state aid could be cleared before starting the investment. And overall, we think it would be an easier way to facilitate interregional cooperation. So in terms of conclusion, we need to continue building on what has already been achieved in the current programming period as regard structural funds, broaden the scope of smart specialization strategies, as I said before, not only research and innovation, but also to small, medium enterprises, digitization, upgrading of skill, strengthen the importance of complementing the physical investment with soft investment, and reinforce the governance with the right institutions and mechanisms in place. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Nicola. Thank you for the insights into the characteristics of smart specialization as, well, I would say one of the key elements of the EU cohesion policy. And if I remember correctly, European Commissioner Corina Crețu also mentioned that in the new programming period, it will have more important role anyway. So thank you a lot for the presentation. Now I would give the word to Mr. Hugo Hollanders from University of Maastricht.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, all of you who managed to make it. I'll try to be brief because I know that we still have a networking cocktail planned. So the presentation will be about several issues, but the key thing is about innovation matters. The rest of the title is just a working title because I had to submit something. The presentation was prepared together with a colleague, well, former colleague and still colleague, Bianca Budugescu. One advantage of a half-empty room is I can easily point to her and she will easily be recognizable, so she's sitting over there. Okay, let's see if I can get this right. Not responding. Nicola. Okay. I had it upside down. So innovation is important. To gain some time, I'm not going to read out the slides. You can see this. I mean, it's also linked to this whole concept of smart specialization about change, changing something in your region, changing something in your country, modernizing the economy, developing something new, product innovation, improving your business process innovation. A quote in last year's European Innovation Scoreboard. The European Innovation Scoreboard, for those of you who don't know it, it's one of, say, the key publications of the Commission in which I try to benchmark and compare the innovation performance of national innovation systems between EU member states, but also other European and neighboring countries. I already saw some slides quoting the scoreboard before, and also the regional scoreboard. And the good news is that the two most recent editions, the 2019 editions, were released yesterday. So why I am referring to this? Because I wrote both reports. So I have to do a bit of PR for these two reports. They were published yesterday. You can go to the website of the European Commission, or you simply Google for them. You can download the reports, you can download the data. There were two interactive visualization tools that will actually allow you to play a bit with the data. And I will show some of the results of these reports in the upcoming slides. So the bad news, if we rank the countries on their innovation performance, and we do this by calculating an average of 27 different statistical indicators capturing different aspects of the innovation system of a country, the Southeast European countries are not doing that well. At least if you look at the blue bar or the blue column that represents the EU, we have 4 different groups: the dark green countries, which are well above the EU average, the light green countries, which are above, but not that far above. We have the yellow-colored countries, the so-called moderate innovators, where we will find 4 of the Southeast European economies, and then we have those which will perform below 50% of the EU average. We still call them innovators, but more modest innovators, and we find 3 countries in Southeast Europe. So clearly, based on the measurement framework that we use, there is an issue in Southeast Europe. If we think that innovation is important, we would expect that at least some countries would be performing relatively better compared to the EU average. If you look at the change over time, the improvement over time, this is only for the member states, so this excludes Serbia and North Macedonia. We see that only Greece has managed to improve its performance faster than the average for the EU, and that the other 4 countries in Southeast Europe have seen a rate of improvement below that of the EU, and for 2 countries it has even been negative, Slovenia and Romania. And guess what? We happen to be in Romania today, so I have to pay a little bit more attention to what's happening in Romania. This slide shows you the indicators that we are using in the innovation scoreboard. I'm not sure if you can read it. I can read it. Hopefully you can also read it. But most important is that I have highlighted some of the indicators, and in particular indicators which are using data from which was used to be called the Community Innovation Survey, but nowadays we call it the European Survey on Business Innovation, but it's the same. So it's a questionnaire that you send out to enterprises and you ask them about whether or not they had innovation activities or whether or not they introduce different types of innovation. And the indicators using innovation survey data, they are highlighted in red. And what do we see? They're all going down. So the indicators directly measuring innovation activities in Romania have not improved over time. No, on the contrary, they have worsened, and they have worsened significantly over time. So something is happening. And although data do not always tell you the full truth, at least they signal that something is happening, that innovation is not improving as fast as it should be. And this is also, recognized in the European Semester Country Report, which was published June 5, where we can also see that there are several conclusions and recommendations and warnings about the Romanian research and innovation system. That we can see that in particular, there is a gap between how competitive, domestically owned companies are and how competitive foreign-owned companies are. And that domestically owned companies, they are much less competitive than the foreign ones. And it simply also signals, and what was seen on the previous slide, that there's not enough innovation taking place within these Romanian companies. Of course, the overall innovative capacity is low. That reflects what we see in the innovation scoreboard. We see that at the regional level, there's quite a bit of a diversification between the different regions in Romania. We see this in Romania, but also in other European countries. And that R&D expenditures or R&D investments are relatively low and have not been improving over time. Public R&D is staying a little bit behind. It's the share, for example, of total R&D financed by business is also quite low. What we see in most other European countries, if you have high R&D intensities, normally this goes together with having a high share of your R&D which is financed by the business sector. So in this case, you can say that the business sector is not only not spending enough on its own R&D activities, but there's also not enough funding of activities in the public sector. Or we can also, for example, see that there is not enough collaboration taking place, not enough collaboration between innovating enterprises, with only like 2% of the small and medium-sized enterprises claim that they have collaborated with others, so 1 out of 50. And on the average for the EU, it's almost 1 out of 8. So there is an issue about not enough collaboration among companies, but also collaboration between science and business. On the other hand, we still see that the country is growing fast. So there's a lot of economic growth. It's a bit not the kind of, say, result that you would expect. We always tell people like innovation is important, and without innovation, your country will not perform well, will not, say, grow fast. Here we see the country. We do see that without innovation, and not enough innovation, the country is doing well. But most of this growth is driven by, say, a demand factor. It's about consumption-driven growth. It's about growth which is the result from having increased wages. And the question is this really sustainable? Because we see in other European countries that sustainable economic growth which will happen over a longer period of time, is driven by competitiveness, and competitiveness is driven by innovation. So the question is to what extent the high growth that we observe now will also take place in, say, 3-4 years from now. The final recommendation is to, from the country-specific recommendations from the Commission, is to focus on innovation. Well, I only highlighted the words which I thought are important. So it says focus investment-related in economic policy on innovation and taking into account regional disparities. Okay, what about the regions? So we've seen a slide before from the 2017 Regional Innovation Scoreboard. This is from the 2019 one. And I want to highlight here that although like in a country like Romania, the country overall is not doing well, you do have like these kind of regions. In this case, it's the Bucharest region, which is performing well above the average of the country. We also see this in Bulgaria, where the Sofia region is doing much better. We also see this in Greece, where the country as a whole is a moderate innovator, but one region, Crete, actually performs above the EU average, and it's a strong innovator. So we do find these regional pockets of excellence. And if I would have shown the map for the whole of Europe, but the focus of the conference is on southeastern European countries, you would see that there is this kind of variation at the regional level in most countries, where the country as a whole, for example, Germany is a strong innovator, but we find innovation leaders among the regions, but we also find regions which perform well below the EU average. We also see this at the growth performance. So the greener the color, the faster innovation performance has improved. The more, say, purple the color, the more negative the innovation growth has been, or innovation performance has worsened. And here we also see regional differences within countries. You can find the more detailed maps also on the website of the Commission, and well, there was no time to bring any hard copies to this meeting, as the report was released yesterday at 12, and I was at the flying towards Bucharest around that time, so that was a bit difficult. So smart specialization. So if we see this, that there are these differences, say, in regional performance, then we can also make a link to smart specialization, because smart specialization is really about trying to benefit from differences and to benefit from the strengths between regions. And now I'm changing hats, because up until now I was talking like as the lead author of the European Innovation Scoreboard, but I'm also here because I'm one of the experts for the Joint Research Center on mapping studies. And mapping studies are, and it was already said several times this morning and also before, is about using available economic data to identify relative strengths and weaknesses in your region. You can do this using economic data, you can do this using innovation data, you can also use export data, patent data, publication data. Whatever is available you could use, but the focus should be on economic data and innovation data. At least that is where my focus is. So you have a quantitative analysis which can help you to identify priority domains. Of course, you have to combine this with information coming from qualitative analysis, because statistics can tell you a lot, they cannot tell you everything. Statistics are not always up to date, they don't reflect the most recent developments. Statistics might not capture, say, new cross-cutting emerging activities, but statistics will be a good starting point to help you understand, like, where is my region already doing well, where are there signs that my region is improving, and which are then potential priority areas to focus your policy on. The methodology that we use, and we have applied this in several countries, in Serbia, in Montenegro, the Republic of Moldova. I just finished work on 25 regions for the Ukraine. We're working on the mapping for North Macedonia. Is that you try to identify industries which are specialized. So where your region is doing better than your country, or where your country is doing better than someone else. You also want to focus on industries which are relatively big, so not too small. We don't want to identify industries which only employ 5 people. So there's a kind of a lower threshold. We're not only interested in identifying current strengths, we also want to see if industries which are not yet, say, important enough, might become important in the near future. So we also look at the trend result, a trend analysis, looking at how industries have evolved over, say, the past 5, 6, 7 years, depending how much data you have available. Okay, and I have to really speed up. 2 more slides left, so I'll manage. Economic data, my experience for most of the countries is this is well available. For most countries, we will have industry data at a 3-digit level on employment, on turnover, maybe value added, on wages. We have data normally for between 5 and 10 years. Ideally, data should be available at the regional level if your country is big enough to have regions. Preferred data source, official statistics, so National Statistical Office. When it comes to innovation data, I put up a question mark just to be kind. If I would not be polite, I would have put thumbs down, because there are quite some issues with these data. Either they're not available, or they're not completely available, or they're not available at a sufficiently detailed level, or the data are not being made available by a statistical office in a format that people like myself can use them. So there are quite some issues. And innovation data are important because you do not only want to identify industries with, with an economic potential, you also want to know if in these industries there is a capacity to innovate, that these industries can change, can modernize from within. And for this you need innovation survey data. And the drawback with official statistics is that these innovation survey data are not available for all industries in the country. They focus on what they think are more likely to be innovation-intensive industries. So agriculture will be excluded and half of the service sector will be excluded. So it's difficult to then combine these data with economic data covering the whole economy. There are some issues. I think a relevant issue is, and I think that's also addressed some of the comments also from North Macedonia, but also other smaller countries. If you don't have regions in your country, and if you want to apply to what some people refer to as the Joint Research Center methodology, with whom should you make the comparison? With the EU? With neighboring countries? Which neighboring countries? How to get access to the data of these countries? So that's not always, so having good data is important, but sometimes it's really difficult to get access to good data. And even if you have access to the good data, you still, I think, need to know how you want to use these data. People always ask me like, we want to apply the Joint Research Center methodology. And I always say, there is no Joint Research Center methodology. There are some general ideas, there is a kind of a common understanding what needs to be done, but every country is unique, every region is unique, so you have to customize this. What I did for the Republic of Moldova is different from what I did for Montenegro, and what I've now recently finished for the Ukrainian regions is different than what I did for Montenegro, and it's different what I did for the Republic of Moldova. You learn over time, but you also start to recognize that countries are different, and this is a very important aspect to take into account. I skipped this slide to save some time. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugo, for practically fresh data that just came out of the oven, so to say. We have seen some warning signs in terms of innovation performance in the region, and since it is the heart of the smart specialization that the innovation performance, innovation potential has to be taken into account, we hope that there will be some positive correlation in the future in terms of our region. Without further ado, I would give the floor to Mr. Ramoius Reimeris from Mosta. The floor is yours.
Good evening, everybody. I'll try to be as brief as Hugo. And Nicola, please, if I go beyond the limit of 10 minutes, just please show me a sign. And here today, I'm prepared to talk a little bit about the capacities to monitor and to evaluate the implementation of smart specialization strategies, which I find to be a very important element of the design of the strategy and of implementation of the strategy, of evaluation, of redesign, and et cetera, and et cetera. I think that the first two presenters, they made their point, connecting dots with the data, how important it's to have the data, to understand the data, and how it is important to use this data for the next programming period for the member countries. So just very briefly, you know, the monitoring function, and I think it's a good time to speak right now about it, because talking about the Western Balkans, many countries are in the process of the design of their strategies and monitoring systems, so it still can be adjusted if needed. Basically, why do we need it? Because we are responsible for all stakeholders that we have within our strategy, and it's a very good tool to have an ongoing dialogue. And even 2 steps further after that, the monitoring function or the elements of monitoring function can be used for interim evaluation, which we did recently in Lithuania. Many countries actually followed this pattern, and we can adjust strategies. We can learn something, and we can, you know, adjust strategies while running the strategies. After that, of course, we will have to do the impact assessment. We will try to see, so what happened, you know, what was the effect of the strategy. So, you know, to understand these levels, so the monitoring would have the goal to determine the state, so where we are currently with our implementation of the strategy. The evaluation would allow us to ask the question and answer the question, well, is it good? Is it in good direction? Do we doing as planned, or what is the discourse of our actions, and can we take some adjustments if needed? And yes, talking from my practice, we did learn a lot doing this interim evaluation, and for the better. I hope that still, as the lifespan of the strategy goes beyond 2020, we still can have some positive effects because of the interim evaluation. And of course, the last step would be, so what was the benefit? So if we were seeking for economic transformation, did it happen? That would be the question for impact assessment, which would be also based on the function of the monitoring, which systematically has gathered and provided evidence during the course of the strategy implementation. To illustrate the constellation of this function, how it can be realized, for this time instance, we can think of it as of 2 bodies, or 2 levels. One we can call technical level or technical capacities. Another one would be administrative capacities. So basically, there should be a body which should be responsible for gathering the data, but not only the gathering, not only, you know, gathering, crunching the numbers, but also be capable to process this data into something meaningful, if possible. And not only the data, there are various other signals. There are some meta-analysis available, some other reports available, which should be kind of reflected and provided as an evidence. Basically, this function can be carried out by government, appointed body, or by academia, because they usually have the capacities to do this. But shouldn't be just one-time contract only, because this function is needed to be permanent. The other level is the body that should actually make the sense out of this data, be able to interpret it and to steer according to the interpretations. And that should be led by enough authority to make the decisions, to make the steering. And actually, it should be a body which would reach an agreement among the stakeholders what should be done and what should be avoided to be done. This body would usually run the EDP, would also consult the stakeholders, which would help, you know, to understand the available data, and actually not only understand, but would fill in the gaps with the data, which will always happen. And in this constellation of 2 bodies, it is possible to perform monitoring, evaluation, and steering of smart specialization. And I had an opportunity, and thanks to GRC, to work with some of the Western Balkan countries, to observe the situation, to learn from them, to find the problems and try to come up with the solutions. And I was able to gather a picture if we again think about those two bodies, about those two functions. So administrative capacities are almost are established almost in all the countries listed in the table. Actually, this as Smart Specialization Steering Group is usually a very high level body. In some cases, the number of members of this panel, of this group, varies from, I don't know, from little to really big bodies. And I think that it shouldn't be a huge body because that would be an obstacle to make decisions. But of course, it's a choice of every country that they have. The technical capacities, this body, which would be able to observe what is happening and provide something meaningful for this administrative body, it's still in progress. There have been some cases that countries would rely on the capacities that are within academia, because there is a very prominent research centers in Western Balkans, and they also provide a lot of consultancy and a lot of solutions for this administrative body. So it's a possibility to have this function within the academia. But in the longer perspective, I think that every government should have this body within their responsibility. Not the academia, but the government should be responsible for this function and should provide resources for this body to work and to observe smart specialization, but not limited to. In broader sense, innovation policy, maybe further innovation policy combination, policy mixed with other kind of policies of competitiveness, entrepreneurship, industrial, if it's separate strategies. I think that this body should be established. Talking about the data sources, I will not spend much time here. There are various kind of sources, and they all should be used if available, should be understood. But the most recent tradition, or not tradition yet, but this will be a tradition definitely, it's data mining from social networks, companies, web pages, etc. A lot of new sources are coming in, and they're becoming the main source for innovation policy monitoring. I was lucky to participate a month ago in a conference, Innovation Global Lab, organized by Nesta. Maybe you know the organization. They're quite innovative, and I really admire them. A few cases have been presented. So the one on your left, on your left, on my right, actually it's a Berlin region. They managed to train a neural network to predict geographically clustering of innovative firms versus not innovative firms. And on this left slide, on the left side of the slide, you can see the prediction, and actually it's compared with the actual survey. So this trained neural network predicts with a very precise accuracy. So it really changes the game, the rules of the game of the monitoring. On the right side, it's department for the UK Department for Business, Energy and Industrial strategy from UK. Actually, they built an algorithm who can identify the ventures, the firms, which will grow potentially in the future. And they also benchmarked it with surveys, with the results, and they have, I think, 80% accuracy with that, so they will train it a little bit more, and they will be more accurate. So what is happening, actually? All this official statistics, bibliometric, they're about the past. And these trained machines, intelligent machines, they're about the future. So that's where the most important technical capacities lie. And all the countries and regions who will strive for these capacities, they will win. They will win because they have the newest data, not really available by traditional statistics. I've been showing this slide for quite a long time, and I think I should already drop it, but one more time. It's a survey done by the colleagues from GRC. It's interesting because it shows how the countries having smart specialization, they perceive the different steps of preparation of the strategy or implementation of the strategy. And as you can see, the huge difference is actually with the monitoring and evaluation, because many countries, I'm sorry, you can see the huge difference about the analysis of the national regional potential of innovation and monitoring and evaluation, because in the mapping stage, as been already presented, many or most part of the regions, they perceive it as very easy or easy. I mean, it's quite easy to map and understand the potential for innovation. But when it comes to monitoring and evaluation, it's really a different story. It's really hard to understand what is happening while running the strategy. But basically, it's the same. You gather the data, you try to understand the data, you try to understand, so what's the dynamic of your country, of your region, and make some decisions. So when you build your strategy, it's easy. But when you have your strategy in place and try to understand how it's happening, it becomes tough. So that's a pitfall to avoid, and it's a paradox for me. There are other challenges. Basically, as Hugo presented, there are many limitations with the data. Because we have our smart specializations not as sectorial priorities or not by domains or fields of the science. It's something in between, it's something mixed. So actually, to collect a meaningful data and aggregate it to the priority level, it's very tough and very challenging. Sometimes it's even not possible. The large-scale policy mix, and actually in the new programming period that's been presented, is going to be way bigger. It's very complex to understand it, to monitor and to evaluate it. There's just too many measures, too many variables, dependent and independent into that. Inclusion of the stakeholders takes time, but it's very hard to ensure impartiality, because they are the stakeholders, they are the ones implementing the strategy, so they will advocate for their priorities and their sectors. And of course, the golden question, the general evidence-based policy or policy-based evidence, whatever you like, how to deliver the timely and meaningful information. And it's been, a lot of surveys says that we all have to learn how to do this. We still lack of meaningful and timely data for our decision makers. And to conclude, the very last slide, about the changes, understanding the changes, because, well, the monitoring and evaluation should allow us to understand the changes. As from my experience, and the main message is, of course, that everybody's seeking economical transformation. All the regions, they ask, so did it happen yet? No transformation yet. Basically, maybe it will happen, yes, we will try to see, but the changes itself, it can be not really the economical ones, or not economical changes can be precursor to economical changes, but everything is connected here. Because if, according to smart specialization, and I can observe these things happening in some regions of the European countries, and in my country to some extent as well, they can build a better ecosystem, actually. Not focus on the economy, but on the better ecosystem, a more connected one. They can lift the image of the country. They can produce the certain image of the country. There are many other effects that can happen around, not just economic ones. They can address and provoke different behavior of the actors, which is very important. It's a cultural change. You know, the making policy, understanding the policy, involving stakeholders, it can happen differently and in a better way. And I think these changes will come first, and these changes are even more important than economical ones. And of course, in the general sense, the Europe as a continent, I think we should be able to respond to not only regional but global challenges better with our policies. And really looking forward for the next programming period to do that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ramois. Thank you for pointing out the need of evidence-based outcomes for the development of appropriate monitoring evaluation mechanism. And I'm sure that everybody in this room knows that it is a demanding task in regard to the Western Balkans, let's say, and the entire Southeast European region. And I'm sure that experiences from EU would only help in this matter. I will now give the floor to my colleague Marina Ranga from Joint Research Center.
Thank you, Nicola. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to present here this afternoon to give you some insights on something that you have heard of several times today and before, the so-called Lagging Regions project, something that has become very famous, but not everybody knows too many things about that. So this is a great opportunity to learn more about the program itself, about how did it go, about where it will go, and how we handle with all those difficulties and challenges that you have heard about in the previous presentations. Because I think we are dealing with each and every one of those on a daily basis in running this project. So let me tell you a few things first about what we call the Lagging Regions project. This is a generic name, actually, for a package of 4 projects, a big deal there. We have the targeted support to RIS3 in lagging regions, so the Lagging Regions projects per se. But then, in parallel with this, we have a targeted support to RIS3 in Romania, which is a standalone project. These two are actually the heart of the Lagging Regions project. But then to this set was added the higher education and technical education in smart specialization, another complementary project that came from DG Education, and yet another one was the project Stairway to Excellence. So here we are, we have a package of 4 programs that act in close synergy, coming from different bodies of the European structure. So while the 2 targeted support to RIS3 implementation to the lagging regions and to Romania come from the European Parliament and are run by GRC together with DG Regio, the other 2 come from DG Education and DG Employment, and Stairway also comes from the European Parliament. You also have there their starting and end points. So you see they have been added at different points in time, but nevertheless the GRC team dealing with all that is working, as I said, in very, very close collaboration. So we are able to extract different insights, you know, to exchange information and different opinions among ourselves and of course with our country and region partners. In terms of coverage, let me tell you that the big Lagging Regions project actually has increased in scope from the so-called stage 1 to stage 2. Let me tell you the stages first, and then we'll go back to the coverage. This is going very slowly. Let's take them then by order. So in what we call the Lagging Regions project, we include 2 categories of regions. The so-called low growth regions, where the GDP per capita is below the EU average. And here we have 4 countries, Greece, Italy, Portugal, and Spain. And there, the second category is the less developed regions, where the GDP per capita is below 50% of the EU average. And here we have Bulgaria, Hungary, Poland, Romania, and Croatia, the new entry in this new second stage. Between the 2 stages, there have been some changes. For instance, Bulgaria in the first stage entered with 1 region, Severin Centralen, and then we expanded focus to the national level. Croatia entered directly at the national level. Greece has started with Eastern Macedonia and Thrace, and then we rolled out, including other regions and also the national level. Hungary entered with 1 region, now we are working with the national level. Same for Poland, same for Portugal, a little bit of expansion also for Spain, and Romania started with 2 regions, Northeast and Northwest, and then we rolled out to all the 8 regions of the country and also expanded the interaction with the national level. So when we are, for instance, in Romania, when we are saying now we are working with all the 8 regions, that means that we still keep a differentiated approach to the different regions because they are at different stages in implementing the RIS3 strategies. And that requires a sort of customized approach based on their achievements. Northeast, Northwest are already more advanced. There are others, 5 new others, that have their regional RIS3 strategies, but are now catching up with the same type of activities that we performed last year and the year before with Northeast, Northwest. And finally, the capital region, Bucharest-Ilfov, is only now starting to prepare their RIS3 strategy. Now, in terms of aims, let's put all these nice arrows and blocks there. In terms of aims, there is a general main aim of the project, which is that of supporting the refinement and implementation of RIS3 in those regions. And some sub-targets, some objectives that derive from that is, of course, related to the different conditions, specific conditions in those countries and regions, to help meet the enabling conditions for the next financial period and so on. But at the same time, we also have in mind this task of generating lessons and models for other regions. As you have heard today, the model has gained increasing popularity also beyond Europe. In the United States, there's also a talk about that. So the JRC remains the go-to point for this kind of centralized expertise on RIS3. Now, for the reasons of time, I will focus on 3 of those countries, Romania, Bulgaria, and Croatia, the Southeast Europe countries. Let's go to Romania and see what happened during these years in the framework of the Lagging Regions project. Here's the timeline that I meant to show you earlier. Here we see the timelines of the 2 projects, the big lagging regions with the 9 countries and the individual standalone project for Romania in red. Both of them had as a precursor a project that has run in Greece, in Eastern Macedonia and Thrace from 2014 to 15. And then the lessons and the experience that was acquired through that project were further expanded to these 2 projects. Both projects started in July 2016 for an initial period of 2 years. Both have been extended. The one in Romania was originally extended until end of June, in 2 weeks' time, but we have managed to extend it until December this year, whereas the Big Lagging Regions project runs until July 2020. So at the end of the time of our project in Romania, we will then revert to the bigger lagging regions. This means that we will be able to continue some of the activities that we started within the standalone project for Romania, but of course, probably on a smaller scale because the budget available will be also smaller. Now, you have heard several times today that Romania has had a dual approach to RIS3. On the one hand, there was the national approach. On the other, there was the regional approach. Each of these implied different paths, different methodologies, different coordination methods. And the JRC was somehow the bridging point, trying to coordinate between the national and the regional and to bring them on the same page. At the national level, we have the National Research and Innovation Strategy, which states the 4 RIS3 priorities that are listed there. At the regional level, we have 7 out of the 8 regions of the country that have the RIS3 strategies. And as I said, Bucharest-Ilfov, the capital, is only now designing their own. There are different managing authorities. For the regional level, we have the managing authority in the Ministry of Regional Development and Public Administration, and the main funding source comes from the regional OP, Priority Axis 1, whereas at the national level, we have Ministry of Research and Innovation as intermediary body, and there the competitiveness OP is the national, is the main funding source together with some limited budget from the national RDI. So having these 2 parallel, really, paths, we could not achieve too much coordination between the 2 approaches. And this is what we are now trying to bring together, especially in preparation of the new national RIS3 strategy. Our arsenal, if you want, our toolbox was a very complex one. And we have addressed basically every dimension of RIS3, both in the framework of the country project with some country-specific activities and with the so-called horizontal activities that were undertaken in the framework of the bigger lagging regions, the 9-country project, where Romania participated at every moment. So if you take a look at the 4 dimensions of the country-specific activities, we have addressed the EDP, we have addressed the governance, we have addressed basically each helix of the quadruple helix, because we started from the assumption that we cannot understand the cumulated effect or the cumulated dynamics of the quadruple helix if we don't understand how each of the helices works independently. And then we also looked at inter-regional cooperation and put in place some activities for that particular dimension. The EDP, I should make a remark here, we have used the EDP in 2 ways. At the beginning, the EDP was used as a way to identify the smart specialization priorities. But then once these were set and the regional or national priorities strategies have been defined, then we have moved to the use of EDP as a means to identify projects within those priorities. And each of these processes has had their own methodologies, their own dynamics. For instance, at the regional level, we have had EDP workshops to generate projects. Then we have had project development labs to strengthen the quality of those projects. We put in place project writing training courses. 2 of them, Northeast, Northwest, did that last year. The other 5 regions are actually doing that now, until the end of June. We are sending a team of trainers to 5 regions, and they are working with the project proposers in 5 regions, working with them individually, shoulder to shoulder, to prepare their projects for the ROP. We have also looked into governance issues to increase the national regional coordination. We have had a lot of consultations with all the bodies involved. We are also trying to involve the business sector to create activities for the clusters. We are trying to bring more thematic workshops. For instance, in October, we are going to have a big workshop to introduce the thematic platforms of the S3P. We are also going to have a technology management course because there is a big need for increasing the competencies of people, of project proposers and technology managers in general in that direction. And we are also trying to support interregional partnerships. And the bigger one, the horizontal here, a lot of activities, particularly on governance and monitoring. You have heard from my colleague before the challenges that are related to that. Now, just a few words about the challenges for Romania before moving to the other 2 countries. 4 main challenges, but probably everything can fit under those 4 main headings. The EDP process, first of all. And from that dual perspective, as I mentioned, EDP for priority setting and EDP for project generation. And here it's about the process of generating projects and ensuring a proper pipeline, proper funding cycles. We are still struggling to define clear funding sources and calls and deadlines and implementation procedures in terms of coordination between different ministries. And that is something that we are working very, very closely together with the ministries to help improve. The RIS3 governance, that's probably one of the weakest points, especially in terms of institutional capacity at national and regional level. At the regional level, we've been working with the regional development agencies to empower them to coordinate this regional process because you need somebody to steer the process at the regional level. But at the same time, you need this good alignment between the vision and the priorities and the mechanisms that are operating at the national level and those at the regional level. Thirdly, it's a challenge and also a sort of objective at the same time. As RIS3, we see that, and the experience has shown that RIS3 is actually something emerging at the confluence or the convergence point between research and innovation policy, industrial policy, and regional development policy. So we have heard several times today that RIS3 policy is industrial policy. I think it's just more than industrial policy. It's a hybrid between these 3, or at least these 3. And that requires both a combined policy approach, policy making approach, policy implementation approach, and also funding sources. And finally, engaging the quadruple helix. As our colleague Hugo pointed out, university-industry links, the entrepreneurial university, tech transfer, commercialization of research, these are issues that are in the very early days in this country. And there is a lot of work to be done here to improve competencies, mechanisms, procedure, institutions, DTOs, science parks, everything that comes with that package. Because it's not sufficient to talk about tech transfer per se, we have to look upstream and downstream as well. If we want technology transfer, we need technology to transfer, and we need to look at those points or these teams that generate that technology to be transferred. So as a final bottom-up conclusion emerging from that is the fact that the implementation of RIS3 has actually shown that it has contributed to an accelerated development of regional innovation system. It raises challenges in terms of articulating these regional innovation systems with the broader national innovation system in a centralized country, which doesn't have much at the regional level, neither in terms of policies nor in terms of institutions. And summing up, the implementation of RIS3 has actually turned into a mechanism to reform the research and innovation system. And I think that is a unique opportunity for us to take this chance, to take this opportunity and give it proper attention and exploit it at the maximum potential. Yes, 2 minutes. Here, this is just a very quick scheme to show the complex impact of RIS3 coming from this convergence of research innovation policy, industrial policy, and regional development. And you have 4 fronts that are directly affected by that. The EDP, the governance, the technology development and modernization, which comes hand in hand, and also the advancement of human capital. Because we see at every point, at every day, we need new competencies, new skills, new capacity building, and that is done with people. Next, Bulgaria. We will see here a lot of similar activities and a lot of similar concerns to Romania. For instance, we have similar concerns on RIS3 governance. We have thematic meetings for a revision, a rethinking of the RIS3, bilateral meetings with the national level people. We are also looking at intermediary organizations, and Bulgaria has also been involved in the horizontal activities and the peer learning. And the EDP is also a constant concern. In terms of main challenges, pretty much the same: stronger involvement of national regional authorities, the EDP, the center-periphery connection, the need for establishing these support institutions, a network of RIS3 intermediaries. We cannot put pressure on the researchers, as somebody said earlier, because they are not and will never be business people. That's why we need to have support institutions, TTOs, and all the others that come and act as a bridge between science and industry. And again, the capacity building aspect. And finally, Croatia. Croatia is a new entry. We started to work with Croatia only this year. So my colleagues who are dealing with Croatia have had a number of meetings and visits to the country. You see there are ongoing discussions about stock taking, developing commitment, providing opportunities for interregional learning, different events that are being organized in order to raise awareness and address all these main dimensions that I mentioned before. So here I am. I came to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marina. And not to waste any more time, I would give the word to my colleague Aleš Gnaboš to give a final presentation for today's panel session.
So, good afternoon from my side as well. I realize that I'm the only one in between you and the closing session. However, take it as an opportunity because I will present you for the first time the premiere of the study that is really, really fresh. It has been done during the past 3 weeks, really. And it's on the mapping and alignment of the smart specialization priorities in the Danube region as a proxy for the Southeastern European cooperation. The thing is that, of course, it's built on the concept of smart specialization, so it incorporates economic potential, scientific potential, societal challenges, and innovative potential. And it actually, as you know, I mean, the Danube region actually contains the 9 EU member states and the 5 associated and, well, 3 associated and 2 neighborhood countries. So it's a very good proxy for monitoring a little bit the cooperation in between the Southeastern Europe and the Central Europe. You have there like the 2 German regions, the most developed ones, the Baden-Württemberg and Bayern. You have Austria, you have Czech Republic and so on. So the methodology was actually, we tried to see first existing benchmarkings that exist, then clustering some smart specialization domains and priorities based on the logical of connectivity of domains. Then we tried to establish relative research and innovation specialization of these countries, of the Danube countries, by Horizon 2020 projects. And then we actually work on specialization by clustered domains encoded in IATRIS-3 tool. And then based on that, trying to produce some recommendations. It's actually a study that we have tried to do it before, but the problem was that before there was no information whatsoever on the Western Balkan countries and Moldova. So we actually, this was actually already, report was ready already 2.5, 3 years ago, but we never ever published it. We discussed it within the Danube partners. But we never published it because we felt that it was unfair to actually, talk about Danube macro-region and only present the 9 EU member states in it, and missing completely the 5 additional countries which are non-EU countries. So finally, we were bugging actually even our colleagues from Serbia to get the data, although it is of course not the final data, but we introduced already the mapping data. That is still not the final smart specialization data, but it's there. And then of course we acknowledge the Montenegro data and also for Moldova. So of course, colleagues from North Macedonia, you're not part of the Danube, unfortunately, but we will do something similar also in the other Adriatic-Ionian macro region, which actually lately contains also North Macedonia. So this is the result of the socioeconomic regional benchmarking that was available. You can actually see there that there is, it shows very variable part of the eastern, southeastern Europe, but the problem is that, of course, in the Danube region, while it shows huge heterogeneity, it's completely missing the data for the Western Balkan countries and for Moldova and Ukraine. So the existing models are not actually very practical because besides showing some strange results, even for the EU member states regions, it's completely missing the Western Balkan. This is the clustering of the smart specialization domains priorities by connectivity of research and innovation activities and by semantics. It's actually grouped by main keywords and activities into basically seven fields, plus other, which is some basic sciences. And you will see later how it was incorporated into the whole study. We actually established the relative research and innovation specialization by Horizon 2020 projects in clustered smart specialization domains. You can see here the circle, the blue circle is actually how the whole EU is doing on certain aspects, on certain domains. And then you can see that the red one is the Danube EU15, so they are the 2 German regions and Austria. Then the green one is the Danube 13, so the new member states. And then the more grayish one is the Danube associated countries, so Bosnia-Herzegovina, Moldova, Montenegro, and Serbia. You can see that, of course, the Danube specialization is around those that are kind of exceeding the circle. So you can see here that in principle, these countries are comparing to the rest of the Europe much better in the better societies area, in the transport, in energy and food. So we took this as a premises for establishing the comparison in the smart specialization area. It actually contains the data from the IATRIS-3 that most of you know. It covered 31 territorial units of countries and regions with information at relevant territorial level. And it's actually encoded in this basically 8 categories of research and innovation domains. You can see here that while it actually covers 13 out of 14 Danube countries, because unfortunately there is no information whatsoever available for the 4 Danube-Ukrainian regions. Simply, there's no information there, so we couldn't take it into consideration. Here is again, I mean, the prioritization, and then we basically put this in correlation with the priority actions of the European Strategy for Danube Region, so EUSDR. You can see that basically every domain, every smart specialization domain finds its own coverage in various priority actions of the Danube. And we basically match all the 178 smart specialization priorities of these territories within the Danube priority action domains. The results that show from the horizon is those. I mean, the priority, the most prioritized cooperation areas are better society, sustainable energy, advanced manufacturing and materials, and agri-food. Then how to go about it further. So you can see here that these are more specifically the priority areas of the Danube macro-regional strategy. So we try to actually match out of those, out of total number of collaboration area, which in particular go into specific areas. So you can see here the distribution. While it changed slightly is that in some areas like sustainable energy, there's less cooperation possibilities within the Danube than comparing to the advanced manufacturing and materials, where there were 32 actually. Then based on that, we tried to actually develop the prevailing domains with the potential for Danube-wide research and innovation collaboration with broader EU impact. So the thing is that in these areas, the Danube regions are doing much better, are more competitive in the whole EU context. So we are talking about here about practically all the participations in the Horizon 2020, and in these areas which are circled here, the Danube countries are actually doing better than all the rest of the Europe, which means that they are strong there and that there is a strong potential there to actually collaborate with the Western Europe and with the Central and Western Europe especially. Why is this important? Because we were discussing before with our Montenegro colleagues and Serbian colleagues, the idea is that the smart specialization could forge strategic partnership and cooperation between Western Balkan countries and the EU. And here, for example, you can see, okay, well, you can see here the Regional Innovation Scoreboard for 2018 information. You can see on the right, actually the participation in the partnerships of the 3 thematic smart specialization platforms. So agri-food, energy, and industrial modernization. And you can see here, of course, circled the Danube territory. Yeah. So compared to the Southeastern Europe, it's only missing Greece and North Macedonia and Albania, in a way. The rest is more or less there. So you can see here that there is still room for improvement for the participation, especially of the Southeastern Europe, but in particular of the Western Balkan countries in these thematic partnerships supported by the 2 thematic smart specialization platform. So what does this all tell us? Firstly, existing benchmarking, they lack data coverage of Western Balkan countries and neighborhood countries in the macro-regional strategy, and also they show some kind of unconventional categorization, especially for Southeastern Europe, so they are not really useful. The collaboration within the projects of Horizon 2020 and financing, it actually indicates the strengths of some domains in relative research and innovation specialization of countries and regions from the Danube territory. And among all of the topics, in particular better societies, which include services, culture, tourism, creative innovation, and so on, and then sustainable energy, advanced manufacturing and materials, and also agri-food, are the smart specialization domains with the greatest cooperation potential for the Danube region with broader EU impact. So of course with the cooperation with the rest of the EU and with the Western countries. And also very important that the active engagement of Danube and Southeastern European territories in thematic smart specialization platforms and partnerships, and of course through the European Strategic Cluster Partnership for Smart Specialization Investments, will ensure also support through other line policies like the policy of DG GROW, Connect, Agri, Environment, Regio and NEAR, and enhance cooperation also in the Southeastern territories with the EU peers. with the support of DG RTD. This is very shortly from my side, but I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Aleš. Particularly, it's important because of the question of identifying regional value chains, as we talked about already, and this is also where Marina's note from presentation about the effect of smart specialization on potentially changing innovation ecosystems has to be taken into account, and the country should take the best out of them in this process as well. Since we are quite limited in time, I would open the floor to any questions from the audience, one or two perhaps, if there is any. There are two.
So, my name is Alexandru Borcea. I'm representing the Romanian Association for the Electronic and Software Industry. So I remember in the 90s, late 90s, I was asked by SAIPI from United States to make two articles. One was named Romania Holds for Vision, and the second, How to Get a Billion. Okay, in case of the vision, I believe that the situation is almost the same. In the case of the billion, it was a plan to get for an industry, the industry I'm representing, about 1 billion in 5 years. So we get it in 15. So it was a real achievement. Okay, so I saw also the situation. I got it from the Commission already, the report. I'm not very happy. I hope that people from the government understand that without vision and engagement, commitment to what they have to do, they will never catch up in the Union. So I will strive further to improve the situation, and I hope that once they will get the idea to make something important in direction of innovation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So there is no question, just a statement. And Mr. Atanas Kochov behind.
Thank you. I have one question for a brief comment. Actually, this morning there was a presentation from Slovenia about the success of S4, and it was like a best case study about the smart specialization strategy in Slovenia. But this afternoon, with the presentation of Mr. Hollanders, we found out actually with the new scoreboard from 2019 that the innovation performance has decreased in Slovenia for minus 13.6, and even it's published on the website. So how are you going to explain such a good smart specialization strategy, and from the other side we have a huge decrease of the performance in innovation performance of Slovenia? That's one. And second, about the European Regional Developing Fund, and also it's somehow connected with alignment of smart specialization with Danube strategy. I was in Slovenia June 5th and 6th, and there was a huge conference about the new initiative in Europe, which is called 3Cs Initiative, and 8 presidents from 8 countries from Europe, from Southeast Europe, with a great commitment for the new fund for new development of that part of Europe for 8 countries, which means Estonia, Poland, Slovenia, Croatia, Bulgaria, Romania, Czech Republic, and Germany. So how this initiative and this fund is going to be aligned with smart specialization strategies, and what is going to be recommendation for the other countries? Should they be a part of that new initiative, because it's open for new countries, not only for those from those three Cs initiative? Thank you.
Thank you, Adana. So we have 2 questions. I suppose one is for Hugo Hollanders, and the other one is for Mr. Nicola Amy. And if it's fine with you, maybe we should start with the relation of the Slovenian smart specialization strategy and the innovation performance. Thanks.
Okay, is it working? Yes. I cannot really reflect on the smart specialization for Slovenia. One thing I can see in the data for Slovenia is that on average, the data that we use in the innovation scoreboard are between 1 and 2 years old. So there is a bit of a delay between, say, what the data are showing and what's taking place, say, currently. So it could be that the smart specialization strategy in Slovenia is quite relatively recent, which is not yet picked up by the data that we use in the innovation scoreboard. For Slovenia, it's the same case as for Romania. The strong drop is really due to using the latest data from the innovation survey. And the latest data from the innovation survey cover innovation activities between 2014 and 2016. So I think probably the best explanation is that what we're capturing in the scoreboard is, say, the situation of 1 to 2 years ago, which probably does not reflect the latest development taking place in the country and, say, given the implementation of the smart specialization strategy. That would be my best answer without being an expert on the smart specialization strategy taking place in Slovenia.
Thank you, Hugo. Aleš would like to add something to that?
Yeah, just to complement, actually, the situation is the following. I mean, this innovation scoreboard is actually based on the perception also of the companies, no? How do they partially, no? And then secondly, it's based on the GERD, no? On the gross investment into the R&D. And because this has been heavily dropping, it actually, the overall scoreboard result drops, no?
We can go into a lengthy discussion on the scoreboard. I mean, if you want to, I have plenty of time, but it's, yeah, true. I mean, if you send out a questionnaire to companies, you ask them to reflect on something that they did. So there could be something about perception, but still, companies are trained over time. I mean, they get this survey every 2 years. So this could explain, for example, why the overall level in Slovenia on the innovation survey would be, say, lower than that in other countries, but it cannot explain why it suddenly dropped from, say, 2014 to 2016. So I would expect that there is something real happening, so a real worsening in the innovation activity, but it's taking place 3 to 4 years ago.
Exactly, that's the point. It actually happened before the start of the smart specialization, you know, because smart specialization in Slovenia actually started in, well, it was adopted at the end of 2015, and it actually kicked off in 2016. Whereas this is actually picking up the things in the situation by 2016. So actually we should see the impact probably in the next innovation survey.
What you could already probably see is in the scoreboard of next year, because we will normally get access to fast-track innovation survey data 1 year before they're officially being published, and we can already use them and see what the effect would be. So I think that already like around June 2020, we should see, if the case of Slovenia, I would expect to see an improvement.
In any case, it's a very interesting question, and we should follow this because this can show actually the companies normally they were very happy with the whole smart specialization process in Slovenia. So the thing is that we will see how it actually will reflect in the next enquetes, in the next questionnaires.
Thank you, Hugo. Thank you, Aleš. Now the questions on ERDF and the smart specialization for Nikolai.
Yeah. In fact, I'm not fully aware of this initiative of the 8 countries you were referring to, but it seems to me that it's a classical example of partnership, of innovation partnership, and how to ensure that this kind of initiative are fully aligned with smart specialization strategies. This is a very interesting question because probably I could refer to the interregional innovation investment I was referring before. That is a new instrument which is proposed by the Commission. So on the one hand, these initiatives are welcome because we encourage partnership and exchange of experiences between member states. But on the other hand, this new instrument that is still under discussion for the next programming period, so the interregional innovation investment, would be centralized, so under the auspices of the Commission, with probably, as I said, it's still under discussion, but with expert group from the Commission, from the Member States, in order to steer and to ensure that the smart specialization strategy, in fact, is fully aligned. So as I said, this is just to be very, very clear and transparent. Not all the Member States see very favorably the fact that the Commission will direct it. They would prefer, but it's just another instrument that could be available. So in alternative to the partnership that we continue to encourage.
Thank you, Nicola. And
may I just complement this,
yeah,
because
please.
I know a bit more about this.
Just half a minute, if possible.
The thing is that it is really, really new initiative, so it remains to be seen how it will actually influence. But there are in this part of the southeastern Europe, there are two quite established, especially the Danube one, which actually goes on since 2013. So it's much better framework to actually work together. And then also beside this one, also Adriatic Ionian, which is a bit newer, but it already established, it has established framework already, and there have been already some evaluation done on the common priorities for cooperation. So it's much better for the time being. I think it's much better framework to work within the established macro-regional strategies in comparison with completely new initiatives like these 3 Cs.
Thank you, Aleš. And very last question, quick one from Mr. Slava Radošević, if possible.
Thank you. First, thanks to all for presenters for very good substantive presentations. I have questions for Aleš and for Hugo. For Aleš, it's very interesting this that we finally have an idea of what are these common areas for cooperation for Danube region. My question is, I was involved in a similar exercise for Central Europe. Question is basically, now that we know these areas, but for me the next logical question is, are these areas where we primarily see opportunities in upstream areas or downstream areas? In a sense, whether this is a cooperation opportunities for Max Planck, Fraunhofer's, or it is for Volkswagen and the other. I mean, this is not trivial issue, this is quite important. Are you able to have insight into that? Were you able to kind of do mapping which divides then opportunities on upstream and downstream areas? I know it's not easy, but that would be kind of logical policy question. And the second question is for Hugo, which is really interesting because a lot of us are using a scoreboard, and then we have this evidence like you showed today, economy grows, so why should minister worry that on a scoreboard things are not so good? So the answer which one could say, well, this is the maybe measuring just capacity for further growth, and until capacity converts into kind of growth, that takes time. That would be one answer. Second answer would be that scoreboard is measuring just R&D based component of growth. Growth can come, as you said, from demand, can come from non-R&D based components. You know, the point is that we've obviously got a problem, and that maybe after we now already have a decent time series would be maybe a chance for more analytical work on exploring the relationship between the scoreboard indicators and growth, total factor productivity, labor productivity, to see what are the relationship there. That's also a paradise for some small econometric exercise. But I'm sure you have something more to tell us on this, because the questions like this will be more and more. Thank you.
Thank you, Slava. Please, quick reply, if possible. Would you like first, Aleš?
Okay. Many thanks, Slava. Very interesting question, and indeed, we are trying to address that. But it actually, beside, the problem is that the IATRIS3 data alone does not suffice to actually assess that, whether it goes upstream or downstream. So we are trying to actually match also and investigate the ESIF viewer and the other tools that we have that are actually giving some more information. Of course, the problem is that countries and regions are very reluctant on reporting a bit more specifically on their priorities. So what happens is that we are limited by these tools are all limited by the fact what regions and countries are willing to actually report. And they, for strategic reasons, they want to stay more in the generic level, which actually limits the research itself. So we are trying to get a bit more into depth, but I'm afraid that we will not be able to really assess it very specifically, but it's still an ongoing study, and we will try to actually combine it with some additional studies of patents and so on and see, and so that way we would have a little bit more information. Yeah.
Thank you, Aleš. And now Hugo for a quick reply.
Quick reply is a challenge. It's an interesting question, of course, a challenging question, and because it also challenges what the scoreboard is trying to do. We looked at this already in the past. I think we already had a report back in 2004 where we looked at, where we tried to analyze the link between innovation performance measured on the scoreboard and the economic performance, and to be honest, the results were quite disappointing. You could not show that countries which do better on the scoreboard would grow faster. We do know from firm level analysis, from econometric analysis, that more innovative firms do tend to perform better, to grow faster, to employ and hire more people. So there is evidence at the firm level, but it's really difficult to transfer this to the country level, in particular because in the scoreboard, many of our indicators measure inputs and throughputs, but not so much outputs. So we do not really capture what innovation is doing for the country. We have a lot of, say, indirect proxy indicators simply because we don't have the indicators that we would like to have. So, but the suggestion to use the, say, the long time series we have, as we have the scoreboard since 2001, is something to look into. I will drop the idea at the Commission in Brussels. One thing that we will be doing after summer is for a period of 12 months is start to prepare the revision of the framework for the 2021 report. And maybe this is also an aspect to take into account, to what extent the scoreboard can actually be used to explain other, say, economic performance measures that we observe, like economic growth. And also try to bring this into the scoreboard framework to try to improve the whole, say, the measuring of the innovation or the capacity of the innovation system of a country.
Thank you, Hugo. Now we have reached all the limits of the time. I'm sure that there is much more questions about this topic, but I would at this point like to thank all the panelists for their contribution and the discussion that was produced here today. And I would like to ask you to remain in your seats for the final session, which will be given by Ms. Sharlina Vicheva. Thank you.
Many thanks to the speakers. So back to me with some closing remarks. I hope you still have some energy, but from the questions and engagement, even at this last session, I judge that there is still a lot of energy in the room, but it will be saved for the time between now and the next event. So I will try to be very short because we are going to issue a report and it will be available to you with all the conclusions. And probably I was thinking, because there were a lot of questions to our panelists now, but also from the other sessions, probably it will be a bit more creative approach to the reports. It's not only to report and mean it, everything that is a lesson and takeaway and what happened, but also probably the reply to some of the questions that came and there was no time for their response. So think about that. Now, I would like to start with thanks, and many, many thanks to the Romanian presidency, to the Agency on Education and Science, Adrian is just coming, to the University of Polytechnica, and of course, I would very much like to thank the team of the Joint Research Center, Giancarlo. Thank you so much. Then we go to Manuel. I'm very happy that we have colleagues from DG Regio, and Nicola, I really appreciate that you managed to step in for the Deputy Director General. I will say to my colleague, my dear friend Normans, that you did very well. Ales, Nicola, the two Alessandros, Marina, very important work because it was really relevant for Romania. And we want to take benefit of all the work that we do in JRC in the hosting country. So you did a very important work. Then Stoyan, Elena, very important members of the team. I said the two Alessandros. So everyone, and Andrea, where is Andrea from our communication unit? Thank you so much for making it happen. Now, what should I try to summarize? as I said already in the Sofia event, what is really important and it really brings now added value is that we bring ourselves together. And I will take from Professor Radošević, he said, oh, I see now familiar faces. Yes, indeed. The important thing is that we build a community, a network of people that know what's happening in the region, to build our knowledge, to build our trust, to build the networks so that we can build economic growth on the smart specialization experience that we have. Then, what we managed to do is to take stock, because before we learn from our lessons, we need to know the lessons. So my takeaway from this meeting is that there is a lot of advancement, especially in the Western Balkans. Not all, I have to be critical, some of the countries are not moving very fast, but it is up to Montenegro, Serbia, and partially North Macedonia, which is trying to step in, to bring the others, because the Albanian colleague was suffering from lack of cooperation, but I don't see many people. I'm not going to ask in the audience how many people remain in the audience from Albania, because probably we will not find many. So it's a two-direction effort. So let's bring the whole region up there and integrate it in the bigger region of South and Eastern Europe. From the stock taking, we have a lot of advancement in Montenegro and Serbia. And what I really liked is that from the member states, we have a very fair and critical approach. So we really, we are enthusiastic because we need the spirit and the energy, but at the same time, we think critically and we are trying to do our best. I liked very much the question of linking the dots from Atanas Kočov. Okay, well, if Slovenia is so well, why? So these questions we have to ask ourselves, and we have to try and respond so that we are relevant. On top of this stock taking and lessons learning, what is important is that we are building collaborations. And I'm very serious. Next time, Croatia, where is probably the State Secretary Antičić left because it's not easy to stay for the whole day. But next time in Croatia, or probably in Serbia, because we are discussing now to have the next event, because it will be the order of a non-EU member state, and it's still not confirmed, but you will expect news. Probably in Serbia, if too early, at least in Croatia, I'm going to ask the question, what did you do? And there will be workshops built on the basis of what type of concrete positive steps and collaborations have been happening. I took on board, and I'm sure that in the report we will have everything that we promised about the thematic platforms, about the technology transfer, a lot of work for Giancarlo, but the energy of Giancarlo is there. It's a lot, so I'm sure that you will handle it. I understand that in one of the workshops you were even asked to see what's going on in China, in the US, so very wide scope. But of course, when we talk about copying, it is not the way forward. So we can take advantage of the best examples, but then we have to tailor them into the concrete realities of our country. So creative approach is very important. Now, I'm not going to go into the various conclusions. I had some reports from the colleagues, but all in all, what I understand is that you're happy with our joint work. I understand that the work of the Joint Research Center is kind of appreciated, which is good news. It's not just that I have my heart, beating harder, but it's simply that we have to be useful. However, what we need to step up is building capacity. And it's not only for the Western Balkans. It is for the whole region, and we have to do this type of capacity building that is necessary and in a smart way. Another element was still difficult to prioritize. So I remember what the Slovenian colleague said, prioritization is not the most important, but then he started the whole construction on priority. So prioritization is still important and it is painful. So we have to try and see how to manage it. Then what came from Manuel was to get sufficient funding. I understand for the Western Balkans it's difficult, but there are sources, and again the Competence Center on Technology Transfer is developing smart solutions of how to mobilize and smartly construct financial sources. The next was communication between stakeholders. Again, the nitty-gritty of the smart specialization is to establish and sustain a real dialogue which is ongoing and continuous between the stakeholders, the four ends of the quadruple helix. Continuous effort, we shouldn't stop encouraging that. I understand that our framework for assessment of that was developed by, I think it was by the unit of Giancarlo for the universities. It is well appreciated with quite, no, it's not from there, from B7 probably. B7, yeah, so, but that doesn't matter. For you, it doesn't matter. That comes from the Joint Research Center, was really appreciated. It was considered quite concrete and very relevant. And I understand that on the side of the fast-growing enterprises, there is a lot of achievements out there, but there are still difficulties to connect the dots between the needs, the concrete needs of the fast-growing enterprises and what we offer. I forgot Koen and my colleagues from the knowledge management unit in JRC. Sorry, Koen, and thanks a lot for everything that you're doing. What are the next steps? So we will prepare the report. You will have all the feedback. The message on the enlargement side is quite strong, though I understand that the decision was postponed next to October for the start of the negotiations. But let me reassure you, you have so much work to do. Whether you will start the negotiations 1 or 2 or 3 months earlier really doesn't matter. And the second very important takeaway, don't consider the smart specialization as an external tick-off. Just remember what the Greek college said, starting with skepticism and really internalizing all the benefit of the process. It is for your good, so don't take it as an obligation, but as a way, a path to improve your economic performance. So the next step is we continue our work with all the countries. The Joint Research Center is there working jointly with DG Regio. And we are expecting feedback from Serbia to see whether the next event, the 4th event, will be there, built on the very successful event in Montenegro. And then we will talk with the Croatian presidency to see for the next stock-taking event where I would really look for concrete achievements. So from me, thank you very much to all the speakers. Thank you very much to all the participants. I see that people are really thinking creatively. They're trying to find solutions. We are there to help as well. Let's make the best for this region with all the means and all the expertise we have. We have real richness in our region, and we have to make the best out of it. Thank you very much, and see you next time. All the best.
Thank you so much. Nothing to add, just to say a few words of appreciation for the way we collaborate to organize the conference. Thank you so much, Giancarlo and your team. Thank you very much for all of you attending the conference. For me, it's important. Exactly, we have a nice, beautiful community, and we all hope to see it growing and developing itself by collaborating and sharing. Thank you so much, and have a nice trip back home. Thank you so much.